Chapter 1, Civilian Air. The corridor in his dream had no end. It stretched away in both directions, lit by a soft, even glow without visible source, the kind of light that belonged to memory more than physics. Doors lined the walls at regular intervals. Some were labeled, the words floating just above the frames in neat Federation standard type, as if the ship's computer were trying to impose order on the unconscious. Omicron Theta. The Trial. Illegal. The Emotion Chip. He walked past them as if he had somewhere to be, his bare feet silent on the deck plating. On the opposite wall were doors with no labels at all, blank panels that were still unmistakably doors, as if the ship had built them and then forgotten what to call them. He stopped in front of the nearest blank door. His hand rose to the latch and hovered there, trembling. Behind him, down the corridor, a voice called with calm familiarity, "Commander Data." He turned. At the far end stood himself straight-backed, eyes steady, the faint gold sheen of artificial skin under impossible light. The android did not move. It waited as if waiting were its native element. "Are you going to leave me?" the android asked. Data's throat tightened. In the dream, he could feel the tightening as pressure, as heat, as something that demanded response. "No," he said, and the word came out with breath. "I'm going to carry you with me." He turned back to the blank door and pulled it open. Light poured out, too bright, too white, too complete. He stepped forward and woke with his heart hammering against his ribs. The darkness of his quarters pressed in gently, familiar in shape but newly textured. The air tasted faintly of recycled oxygen and the clean metallic edge of the ship. His mouth was dry, his skin was cool where the sheet had slipped off his shoulder. He lay still and listened inward. The heartbeat was not a sound he heard with ears. It was a sensation in his chest that traveled through bone. It was constant, stubborn, and oddly intimate, as if his body were speaking to itself in a language it refused to translate into words. Data raised a hand and pressed his palm lightly against his sternum. Thump, thump, thump. Ordinary. Miracle. He sat up and waited for the dizziness that sometimes followed waking. It came in a slow wave, then receded. The air in the room felt thick for a moment, as if he had to earn each breath. "Computer," he said softly, his voice sounded rough with sleep. "Time." "Stardate 4638-422, the computer replied. Data swung his feet to the deck. The motion felt unreasonably human. Small joints aligning, skin shifting over muscle, the slight pull of tendons. He stood and watched the replicator with measured steps, aware of the fact that measured was now a choice rather than an intrinsic property. "Water," he said. A glass appeared. He drank. The water was cool and tasted faintly of minerals he could not name. The sensation of it moving down his throat and settling in his stomach still startled him, even after days. His uniform hung in the closet, immaculate. The sight of it made something in his chest tighten again, not fear, not exactly, but a pressure that wanted to be called grief. He had resigned. The word still felt unreal, like a line in a log entry he might later correct. He opened the closet anyway and let his fingers brush the fabric. It was familiar in a way his new body was not. Duty had been a constant. The uniform had been a symbol of belonging, of purpose, of a place on the bridge where his presence made sense. Now he was, as Commander Riker had phrased it with careful kindness, off the roster. Off the roster meant free. Off the roster meant unmoored. Data closed the closet and chose a simple gray shirt and trousers from the civilian garments he had replicated after the resignation, an experiment in identity that felt too much like costume. He dressed slowly, learning his own preferences by noticing what irritated him and what did not, the way certain seams felt against skin, the way fabric clung when he moved, the odd comfort of a collar that did not constrain. He looked at himself in the mirror. The face was still his. The eyes were still the same color, but the expression was never fully still anymore. Micro-movements lived around the mouth and brow, betraying thought, betraying feeling. He lifted his hand and touched the place on his chest where his combat had once sat. Bare cloth. No small piece of metal to announce his rank to the world, to remind others, and himself, who he was supposed to be. He left his quarters and stepped into the corridor. The ship hummed beneath his feet. He could feel it in a way he never had before, a low vibration through the deck plating, the pulse of power distribution, the faint thrumming of the warp core even at impulse. The Enterprise was not merely around him, it was beneath him, inside him, a companion whose presence he could not ignore. He walked without a destination for several minutes, letting the corridors carry him the way humans sometimes let thoughts carry them. He passed two ensigns who glanced at him, then looked away quickly. He caught the flicker of recognition, the uncertainty of what to call him. Lieutenant Commander. Mr. He? They chose nothing and hurried on. The absence of a title was its own kind of pressure. 10 Forward was quieter in the early hours, the lounge lit low and warm. A handful of crew sat scattered near the windows, nursing drinks or silence. Guinan stood behind the bar polishing a glass, her movements unhurried. She looked up as Data entered, and her eyes lingered on him in that attentive way that made him feel seen rather than observed. "You're up early," she said. Data approached and sat on the stool he had come to think of as his. "I slept," he said, as if the words were still strange in his mouth. Guinan's hands paused. "How was it?" Data considered. "I was, not aware for several hours." "That's one definition," Guinan said. "Did you rest?" The question made him frown. Rest implied more than unconsciousness. It implied relief. "My body's fatigue has lessened," he said, and then added more quietly, "My mind feels crowded." Guinan set the glass down and leaned forward. Crowded with what? Data stared out the window at the stars slipping past, indifferent and ancient. "With the absence of schedule," he said, "with the knowledge that I have no assigned function." Guinan's mouth curved faintly. "That's civilian air," she said. Data turned back to her. "Civilian air." "It's what people breathe when nobody tells them what to do next," she said. "It can feel like freedom. It can feel like panic. Usually it's both." Data's fingers rested on the edge of the bar. They trembled slightly, almost imperceptibly. He disliked the tremor. He disliked disliking it. "In Starfleet," he said, "my purpose was externally defined." "And now you have to define it yourself," Guinan said. "That's harder than calculating a trajectory." Data let out a short breath that might have been a laugh if he had been less careful. "There are no manuals," he said. Guinan reached for a teapot and poured him a cup without asking. The scent rose, earthy, slightly floral. It made something in his chest ease by a fraction. "There are always manuals," Guinan said. "They're just written by people who want you to live their version of your life." Data held the cup between his hands, feeling its warmth seep into his palms. "Starfleet will attempt to write mine," he said. Guinan's gaze sharpened. "They already tried." Data's throat tightened. He did not like remembering Sato's hands on his shoulder, the transporter hum rising, the sense of being taken apart by someone else's intention. He said, "They have ceased for the moment." Guinan watched him. "For the moment," she repeated, as if tasting the words. Data took a sip of tea. The warmth slid down his throat and settled in his stomach like a small anchor. "Do you regret resigning?" Guinan asked. Data opened his mouth, then closed it, surprised by the question's directness. Regret was not a calculation. It was an ache. He thought of Picard's hand, of the dignity in his eyes. He thought of the bridge, the console, the ease of competence. He thought of the terror of being overwritten. "I grieve," he said finally, choosing the closest word, "and I am relieved." Guinan nodded, as if that answer had been inevitable. "That's honest," she said. "Honest is a good place to start." Data stared at the tea and watched the faint ripple on its surface as the ship moved. "I do not know what to do with the hours," he admitted. Gwynen's voice softened. "Start smaller," she said. "Eat when you're hungry, rest when you're tired, talk when you want to talk. That's not a strategy, it's practice." Practice. He had once pursued humanity through practiced facial expressions in a mirror, social simulations on the holodeck, the careful learning of jokes. He had imagined practice would lead to mastery. He was learning now that practice might never end. "Dr. Crusher requested I report to sickbay this morning," Data said. "She wishes to continue monitoring my adaptation." Gwynen's eyebrows rose slightly. "That bother you?" Data felt the familiar flare of resentment, hot and quick. "Yes," he said, surprised again by his willingness to admit it. "I am tired of being assessed." Gwynne leaned closer. "Then tell her," she said. "Not as an order, as a boundary." Data blinked. Boundaries were something humans set with other humans. He had never needed them before in quite this way. His body had not been a site of vulnerability that others could claim. "I will attempt," he said. Guinan nodded. "Good." She straightened. "And Data?" He looked up. "Don't confuse being watched with being known," she said. "They're not the same." The words landed quietly and stayed. Sickbay smelled like antiseptic and clean air. It had always smelled like that, but now the scent felt sharper, more intrusive, as if it insisted on being noticed. Dr. Crusher met him at the entrance with a pad in hand and an expression that was professional with an edge of annoyance. "You're on time," she said, as if punctuality were a small victory. "It is a habit," Data replied. Crusher gestured toward a biobed. "Sit," she said. "And before you start looking offended, yes, I know you're not my patient in the traditional sense anymore, but you are still a person with a body I don't fully understand." Data sat. The biobed's surface was slightly cool under his hands. Crusher scanned him with a tricorder, the device humming softly. Data watched the lines on the display, wishing absurdly that he could interpret them with his former speed. Crusher made a small sound. Vitals are stable, she said. Blood pressure normal, heart rhythm normal. You're sleeping? Yes, Data said. Approximately 6 hours per cycle. Any dizziness? Crusher asked. Data hesitated. He thought of the wave that had come when he sat up. He thought of the brief spin after walking too quickly down a corridor yesterday. Occasionally, he said. Crusher's mouth tightened. We'll keep an eye on it, she said. She set the tricorder down. I'm going to take another blood sample. Data's fingers curled slightly. He forced them to relax. Doctor, he began, then paused. The idea of stating a boundary felt awkward, like a new muscle he did not know how to use. Crusher looked up. Yes? Data drew in a breath. I am aware that continued monitoring is medically appropriate, he said carefully. However, I would like to request that the frequency of invasive tests be minimized when possible. Crusher studied him. For a moment, her expression softened. That's fair, she said, and for the record, I don't enjoy turning you into a pincushion, but I have to know what's happening inside you. Data's chest tightened. Is something happening? He asked. Crusher's eyes flicked to the pad, then back to him. Her voice was calm, but Data could hear the carefulness in it. Nothing acute, she said, but your last blood work showed some irregularities, small ones. Cellular markers that don't quite match what I'd expect from a standard human baseline. Data's mouth went dry. Irregularities, he repeated. Don't jump to catastrophe, Crusher said quickly, as if reading his fear in the set of his shoulders. Your entire biology is unprecedented. The transporter fabricated a genome and a physiology from a template it made up on the fly. It did it remarkably well, but remarkably well doesn't mean perfectly. Data heard Guinan's words in his mind. Minor is ambiguous. He swallowed. Are you suggesting my physiology may deteriorate? Crusher's jaw tightened. I'm suggesting I don't know, she said, and I hate not knowing. Data's hands were cold. He did not remember his hands being cold in sickbay before. Crusher stepped closer, her voice gentler. Listen to me, you're not dying today, she said. And if I have anything to say about it, you won't be dying quietly and conveniently for Starfleet's paperwork either. The anger in her words warmed Data in a way he did not expect. It was protective. It was personal. Thank you, Doctor, he said. Crusher snorted. Don't thank me yet, hold still. She took the hypospray, drew a sample. The sting of the needle was brief, sharp. Data flinched despite himself. The flinch embarrassed him. Crusher noticed and did not comment. She pressed a small dermal patch to his arm. There, she said. Done. Go eat something, and don't let Starfleet convince you that medical caution is the same thing as consent to be managed. Data slid off the biobed, feeling the slight tremble in his legs. I will attempt to distinguish, he said. Crusher's eyes softened. Good, she said. And Data, if you feel worse, if anything changes, you come to me. Not to Hale, not to anyone with a security badge. Me. Data nodded once. Understood. He left sickbay and stepped into the corridor. The ship seemed louder than it had in 10 forward. Footsteps echoed. Voices carried. Even the air circulation seemed to have a presence. Halfway down the corridor, he paused to lean lightly against the bulkhead. A brief wave of dizziness washed through him, then passed. He closed his eyes and breathed until his heart slowed. When he opened his eyes, an ensign was standing a few meters away, watching him with a frozen expression of concern. Are you all right? The ensign asked. Data recognized her from operations. Ensign Patel, one of the junior analysts who had once approached him for advice about stellar cartography. Her hands hovered as if she wanted to reach out and did not know whether she was allowed. Yes, Data said. The sensation is transient. Patel swallowed. Do you need someone to take you to your quarters? She asked. The pity in the offer was unintentional, and that made it worse. Data felt the hot flare of embarrassment rise in his chest. No, he said, and then softened the words. Thank you. Patel nodded quickly, cheeks flushing. Sorry, she said. I didn't mean... Data surprised himself by stepping closer. You meant to be kind, he said. That is not an error. Patel's eyes widened. It's just... She hesitated, then blurted. Seeing you like this, it makes it feel like anything can happen. Data stared at her. He felt the weight beneath her words, fear of the universe's unpredictability, fear that competence was not armor. He nodded slowly. Yes, he said. I have also noticed that. Patel let out a shaky breath. I wanted to say, thank you, she said, for New Delos. For talking to them. My sister was on that colony once. She told me what panic does to people. Data's throat tightened. Gratitude, warm and painful. You are welcome, he said. Patel hesitated again, then said awkwardly, "My mother has a neurological condition. She gets tired easily. She hates it when people hover. So I won't hover." She gestured vaguely at the bulkhead. "I'll just go." Data nodded. "That would be acceptable," he said, and then added, because it seemed important, "Please tell your mother that I respect her." Patel blinked, startled, then smiled, small and genuine. "I will," she said. She hurried away, and Data watched her go. He realized he was shaking slightly. Not from exertion, from being seen. His comm badge no longer pinned to his chest was absent, but the ship still found him. "Mr. Data," the computer said over the corridor speakers, formal and neutral, "Captain Picard requests your presence in his ready room." Data's heart rate increased. Anticipation, anxiety, both. He straightened and walked toward the turbolift, forcing his steps to remain steady. Picard's ready room smelled faintly of tea and leather. The captain stood by the desk, hands clasped behind his back, posture controlled in the way of a man who had learned to hold chaos at bay by arranging his body in straight lines. "Come in," Picard said, turning. Data stepped inside. He hesitated at the edge of the room, uncertain whether to stand at attention. He was no longer under Picard's command in the formal sense, and yet old habits pressed at him. Picard seemed to sense the hesitation. "Please," he said gently, "sit." Data sat. The chair felt different under him, heavier, more solid, as if gravity had increased. Picard did not sit. He remained standing, and Data felt the imbalance, Captain, and something else. Picard's voice was quiet. "Starfleet has sent a liaison," he said. "Security." Data's chest tightened. "Commander Hale," he said. It was not a question. Crusher had mentioned her name with irritation. Picard nodded. "Yes, she is scheduled to arrive within the hour." Data drew in a breath and forced his voice to remain even. "I understand Starfleet's concern," he said. "However, my resignation was intended to reduce Starfleet's leverage over my choices." Picard's mouth tightened. "Starfleet is not accustomed to losing leverage," he said. Data stared at the captain and felt a sudden, sharp tenderness. Picard looked tired. The lines around his eyes seemed deeper than they had before the hearing, as if defending one person against an institution had a physical cost. "I regret placing you in continued conflict with Starfleet," Data said quietly. Picard's gaze softened. "You did not place me there," he said. "Starfleet did when it forgot what it exists to protect." Data swallowed. The ship's hum was faint beneath the silence between them. Picard exhaled slowly. "I want you to hear this clearly," he said. "You are welcome aboard this ship for as long as you wish. You are not a prisoner. You are not an item in anyone's inventory." Data felt warmth bloom in his chest so quickly it made his eyes sting. He blinked rapidly. "Thank you, Captain," he said. Picard nodded once, then added, with controlled candor, "Nevertheless, Hale will attempt to apply restrictions. She will call them protections. Some may indeed be necessary. Others will be excessive." Data's fingers tightened on the armrest. "If she attempts to restrict my movement," he said, voice careful, "I will resist." Picard's eyes held his. "I would expect nothing less," he said. The computer chimed. Picard turned toward his desk. "Computer," he said, "status." "Priority shuttle approaching," the computer replied. "Requesting clearance." Picard's jaw tightened. He looked back at Data. "That will be her," he said. Data stood. His legs trembled faintly, then steadied. He was aware of his heartbeat, loud and insistent, as if it wanted to remind him that moments could not be undone. Picard moved to the door with him. "Whatever happens," the captain said quietly, "do not let anyone convince you that your life is a problem to be solved." Data nodded once, unable to speak for a moment. They stepped into the corridor. Commander Lysa Hale arrived with 2 security officers and a hard-sided case that looked too much like medical equipment for Data's comfort. She was tall, with close-cropped hair and eyes that missed nothing. Her uniform was immaculate. Her expression was polite in the way of someone trained to be polite while doing unpleasant things. "Captain Picard," Hale said, stopping at a respectful distance. "Commander Lysa Hale, Starfleet Security. I'm here under Directive 47B regarding the protection of high-value anomalous persons." Data flinched at the phrase high value. Picard's voice was measured. "Commander Hale," he said, "this is my ship." Hale nodded. "Yes, Captain, my authority aboard is limited to my directive," she said, then turned her gaze to Data. "Mr. Data." "Mr.?" The word landed with unexpected force. It was correct. It was also a stripping. "Commander Hale," Data said, keeping his voice steady. Hale opened her case and produced a pad. She held it out as if offering a gift. "These are the recommended protocols for your safety and for ship security," she said. "They are not punitive. They are preventative." Data did not take the pad immediately. May I review them? He asked. Of course, Hale said, and her tone suggested she was not accustomed to being asked politely for permission to apply restrictions. Data took the pad. The list was long: escort requirements, access limitations, communication monitoring, prohibitions against entering certain ship sections including transporter rooms 1 through 3, engineering, the computer core, the bridge during red alert, any shuttlecraft bay without security presence. He felt anger rise hot and immediate. These protocols assume I am a prisoner, he said. Hale's expression did not change. They assume you are a target, she replied, and that if you are taken, this ship becomes a liability. Picard's voice sharpened slightly. Commander, you will not speak of a person as a liability, he said. Hale met his gaze without flinching. Captain, I will speak of risks as risks, she said. This is not a moral judgment, it is operational reality. Data's hands trembled around the pad. He forced them to still. You monitor my communications, he said, choosing the point that felt most invasive. Hale nodded. Selective monitoring for contact with known hostile intelligence sources, she said. The Tal Shiar have already expressed interest in transporter anomalies in this sector. They are not sentimental. Data's stomach tightened. The universe was never empty. I have committed no crime, Data said. No, Hale agreed, and for the first time there was something like sympathy in her eyes. But you are new, you are unprecedented, and you are? She glanced at the pad, then back at him. Physically abductable. The bluntness of the word hit him harder than any protocol. Picard's voice turned cold. Commander Hale, he said, you will remember that Mr. Data's consent matters. Hale inclined her head. Captain, consent and security are not always aligned, she said. Data heard the same logic Sato had used, dressed in cleaner language. He took a breath. He tasted recycled air and the faint scent of Picard's tea. He steadied himself. Commander Hale, he said, voice quiet but firm, I will not consent to being treated as an object of custody. Hale studied him. Then you may refuse to sign, she said, but these protocols are directive guidance. They will be enacted regardless of signature. Data's throat tightened. Then my signature is irrelevant. Your signature acknowledges understanding, Hale said. Understanding is useful. Guinon's words drifted through him. Don't confuse being watched with being known. Data handed the pad back without signing. I understand your intent, he said. I do not accept your framing. Hale's eyes narrowed by a fraction, as if she were recalibrating. Noted, she said. She turned to one of the security officers. Begin implementation. Data felt the ship shift around him, door access changing, systems reflagging his identity, invisible permissions being rewritten. He could not see it, but he could feel the way the corridor suddenly seemed less his. The overhead speakers chimed. Captain Picard to the bridge, the computer announced, priority shuttle approaching, requesting immediate clearance. Hale's gaze flicked toward the nearest view screen, then back to Picard. That's mine, she said, as if confirming a schedule. Picard's jaw tightened. He looked at Data, and there was apology in his eyes that did not belong there. Data placed his hand lightly against his chest again and felt his heart hammering, steady and loud. He was alive in this moment. And the universe had just introduced another door. Chapter 2. The Man Who Walks Like Me. The Enterprise received the shuttle like it received everything, with precision, with procedure, with a calm surface that hid the weight beneath. On the bridge, the docking sequence unfolded in quiet call and response. Approach vector stable, Ensign Rowe reported. Hangar bay pressure equalizing, Lieutenant Worf added, voice clipped. Captain Picard stood at the center of it, hands clasped behind his back, expression controlled. Beside him, Commander Hale watched the displays with the focus of someone who believed the worst case was not pessimism but realism. Data stood near the rear of the bridge, not at his station. He no longer had one. The absence felt physical, like an amputated limb. He kept his hands folded to hide their tremor. Shuttlecraft TS-19 requesting final clearance, Rowe said. Picard's jaw tightened. Clear them in, he said. The hangar bay doors opened on the main screen in a feed from internal cameras. The shuttle drifted into the bay on thrusters, a small shape dwarfed by the ship that carried it. Data's stomach tightened. The sensation was so immediate that for a second he thought he might be ill. The shuttle settled onto the bay deck. The engines powered down. The ramp lowered. Picard turned. Mr. Data, he said, voice quiet, come with me. The word Mr. again correct. Stripping. Data nodded. In the turbolift, no one spoke. The hum of the lift's movement felt louder than usual. Data could smell Hale's cologne, subtle, clean, vaguely citrus. The scent made the confined space feel too intimate. They stepped into the hangar bay. Crew members had gathered, not in formal reception lines, but in clusters that looked accidental and were not. Geordi LaForge stood near the edge of the bay, visor tilted toward the shuttle. Counselor Troy was beside him, her hands clasped in front of her as if holding herself steady. Dr. Uri. Crusher stood with her arms folded, posture rigid with displeasure. Worf and 2 security officers positioned themselves near the ramp, professional and ready. The ramp descended with a soft hydraulic hiss. Then he appeared. At first, it was only a shape at the top of the ramp, a familiar silhouette, shoulders squared, posture perfect. Then the figure stepped forward into the hangar bay's light and Data's breath caught. The android's face was his face. Not an approximation, not a holodeck simulation, not a mirror softened by human flesh. A face with the faint sheen of artificial skin and eyes that held a steadiness humans did not naturally possess. A body that moved without wasted motion, each step as precise as a metronome. The man who walked like him descended the ramp and stopped at the base with a crispness that felt like time travel. For a heartbeat, the hangar bay was silent. Data felt heat rush up his neck and into his face. Nausea rolled through his stomach, his hands curled into fists at his sides without permission. Geordi made a small sound, half a laugh, half a sob, trapped behind teeth. The android turned his head, scanning the gathered crew with calm efficiency. His gaze settled on Captain Picard. He stepped forward and stopped at regulation distance. "Captain Picard," he said. "Lieutenant Commander Data reporting for duty." The voice was Data's voice, as it used to be, even precise, unstrained by breath. Hearing it from outside his own chest felt like having his past speak aloud without asking permission. Picard's expression flickered, so quickly most would have missed it. Surprise, relief, something that might have been grief. Then the captain's face settled back into command neutrality. "Welcome aboard," Picard said. His voice was steady. "Lieutenant Commander." Hale stepped forward before anyone else could move. "Captain," she said, "with your permission, I will read Starfleet's transfer orders into record." Picard's eyes hardened by a fraction. "Proceed," he said. Hale activated her pad. Her tone became formal, the tone of a person who has learned to let language do violence without sounding like violence. "By order of Starfleet Command and Starfleet Medical," she read, "Lieutenant Commander Data, reconstructed and reinitialized under Cybernetics Directive 12A, is hereby assigned to the USS Enterprise as Acting Operations Officer to maintain operational readiness." Data swallowed. The words reconstructed and reinitialized scraped across his mind. Hale continued, "The reconstructed officer's origin is as follows. Sewing type schematics on file were used to fabricate an identical duranium alloy frame. Archived operational records and a pre-incident memory behavioral snapshot were used to restore baseline cognitive parameters and service history." She said baseline as if it were an objective good. "Additionally," Hale read, "Mr. Data, transporter-derived organic entity, is to be transferred to Starbase 215 for continued medical evaluation, security assessment, and civilian relocation processing. Transfer is to occur at the earliest feasible opportunity." The hangar bay remained silent, but it was a different silence now, one full of shifting weight. People looked at one face and then the other, as if trying to decide which reality would hurt less to accept. Data felt his heart hammer. Thump, thump, thump. The android's gaze shifted, drawn by the tension like a sensor finding a heat source. His eyes landed on Data. For a moment, the two of them simply looked at each other. They shared a face, but they did not share a body. Data could see the difference now with painful clarity, the android's stillness, the absence of breath, the way he held himself as if gravity were negotiable. And in the android's eyes, Data saw something he recognized from old recordings of himself. Certainty. The android tilted his head slightly. "You are," he said, voice calm, "an organic life form exhibiting phenotypic resemblance to me." The words were not meant to be cruel, that made them worse. Crusher's posture stiffened, anger flashing across her features. Troy's eyes softened, already bracing for emotional fallout. Geordi took a step forward as if pulled, then stopped as if he had run into an invisible wall. He looked from the android to the human and back again. His visor hit his eyes, but his mouth was tight with the effort of not breaking. Data forced a breath in. His lungs burned faintly, as if reminding him that even breathing had weight now. "Yes," he said, voice rougher than he wanted, "that is accurate." The android's gaze sharpened. Analysis, categorization. "Are you a transporter duplicate?" he asked. Data felt a sharp flare of anger. Duplicate, as if his life were a printing error. Picard stepped between them with measured control. "Lieutenant Commander," he said to the android, "this is an unusual situation. You will receive a full briefing." The android turned back to Picard, posture unchanged. "Understood, Captain," he said. "I am prepared to perform my duties immediately." Hale nodded as if satisfied. "Then we proceed," she said. Picard's voice tightened. "Commander Hale," he said, "I will decide when and how duty assignments occur on my ship." Hale met his gaze. "Captain, Starfleet expectation is immediate reinstatement," she said. "Operational readiness has been compromised for days." Picard's eyes narrowed. "Compromised," he repeated. Data flinched and hated himself for flinching. "Captain," Geordi said, voice strained, maybe we should just get them both somewhere quiet." Picard nodded once, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "Agreed," he said. The walk to the turbolift felt surreal. People made room for them in the corridor, pressed back against bulkheads as if two identical faces might take up more space than one. Data felt their attention like heat on his skin. He was aware of his sweat-tiny beads at his temples, and it made him more aware of how human he was. On the bridge, the android moved with immediate familiarity. He stepped to the operations console without being told, hands hovering over controls as if greeting an old friend. Data stood behind, near the observation rail, watching the way the crew's posture shifted. Relief. Not complete, not universal, but real. Android Data glanced at the tactical display and spoke in the same even tone Data remembered using. "Captain, we have received a message from Starfleet Command regarding our course correction. They request an updated ETA to Starbase 215. Hale's eyes flicked to Picard. Picard's jaw tightened. "Noted," he said. "We will respond in due course." Android Data turned slightly. "Captain," he said, "if operational readiness is a priority, I recommend we resume routine rotations and restore standard access protocols to my station." He said "my station," and the phrase landed in Data's chest like a weight. Picard's voice remained controlled. "Lieutenant Commander," he said, "you will receive your access after security verification." Android Data nodded. "Understood," he said, and returned to scanning as if the matter were settled. Geordi stood near engineering control, silent. He did not look at Data. Data could feel his friend's conflict like an ache in the air. Troy approached Data quietly. "How are you doing?" she asked. The question had become a weapon and a lifeline at once. Data swallowed. "I am," he began, then stopped. He could not say functional. He could not say fine. He watched the android's hands move across the console fast, precise, effortless. It was like watching someone else wear his skin. "I feel," Data said quietly, "as if I am observing my own funeral." Troy's eyes went wet. She did not touch him, but her presence was steady. "You're still here," she whispered. Data's throat tightened. "Yes," he said, "that may be the most difficult part." Later, in his quarters, he sat on the edge of his bed and stared at the closet. He opened it and took out his uniform. The fabric felt familiar under his fingers. For a moment, he imagined putting it on an agent, stepping back onto the bridge as if resignation were reversible, as if he could reclaim the shape the universe had taken from him. Then he imagined the transporter room, the hum rising, hands on his shoulder, the word overwrite spoken as if it were kindness. He folded the uniform carefully and put it back. He turned away and found his hand drifting to his chest again, seeking the comm badge that was no longer there. His heart thumped under his palm, steady, insistent, human. There was a chime at his door. He froze. A civilian passenger could ignore a door chime, in theory. In practice, Data was still learning what freedom looked like. "Enter," he said. The door slid open. The android stood in the doorway. Up close, the resemblance was more painful. The android's skin held no pores, no flush, no sweat. His eyes did not dart. His expression was composed in a way Data's face no longer could be. "May I come in?" the android asked. Data stared at him, heart beating too fast. "Yes," he said. The android stepped inside. He looked around the room with mild curiosity, as if it were familiar and not. He turned back to Data. "Commander Data," he said, and the title struck like a blade because it used the old rank, the old certainty. "It is good to see you." Data opened his mouth to answer. No words came. Chapter 3, Ownership of a Name. Captain Picard read the protocols once, then read them again more slowly, as if the second pass might reveal a hidden clause that made them less offensive. Commander Hale sat across from him in the ready room, back straight, hands folded neatly on her knees. She had the practiced stillness of someone who could stand in a corridor full of armed men and not feel the need to prove she belonged there. "You have to understand," Hale said, voice even. "I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to prevent a strategic failure." Picard did not look up from the pad. "You're speaking about a person," he said, "not a shuttlecraft." Hale's gaze stayed steady. People can be strategic failures, she replied. Picard set the pad down carefully, as if he were placing something fragile he did not trust himself not to crush. That is precisely the attitude that led to Commander Sato's attempt to steal Mr. Datta's life, he said. Hale's mouth tightened. Sato acted beyond the scope of acceptable procedure, she said. He has been disciplined. That does not mean the risk has vanished. Picard leaned back slightly. The ready room felt smaller than usual, crowded with the presence of unseen observers in Starfleet offices light years away. Tell me your risk assessment, Picard said. Hale tapped her pad, and the display in front of Picard shifted, a list of bullet points and probability estimates. The Tal Shiar, she said. The Cardassian Order remnants, independent salvage crews, anyone who can turn a pattern buffer anomaly into leverage. Picard's eyes narrowed. Leverage, he repeated. Hale nodded. Mr. Data is now an abductable person with unprecedented technical and political value, she said. If he is taken, the Enterprise becomes a bargaining chip. If he is harmed, Starfleet inherits a martyr and a scandal. If he is returned altered again, we may not know what we're dealing with. Picard's voice went colder. So you place him under restriction, he said, and call it protection. Protection is restriction, Hale said without apology. That is what it is. Picard held her gaze. And Lieutenant Commander Data? He asked. For the first time, Hale hesitated. It was subtle, a fractional pause, but Picard noticed. Lieutenant Commander Data is a commissioned officer, she said. He is not a civilian. He is not biologically vulnerable. He is the continuation of the service record. Picard's jaw tightened. The continuation, he said. Hale spread her hands slightly, an almost helpless gesture. Captain, Starfleet cannot operate on poetry, she said. It needs clear lines. The reconstructed officer has the schematics. He has the training. He has the operational competency. He meets the definition Starfleet understands. Picard's voice was quiet and sharp. And the man who has lived these last weeks does not, he said. Hale's gaze flicked away, then back. He meets the definition of a person, she said. He has rights. That is why he is not being forced into restoration. But he is also a security unknown. In that context, rights and access are not the same thing. Picard stood and walked to the window. Stars slid past the Enterprise as if nothing had changed. Out there, the universe remained indifferent. In here, the ship was becoming a courtroom. You will not treat him as contraband, Picard said. Hale's tone remained calm. I will treat him as a target, she said, and I will treat this ship as a place where targets attract bullets. Picard turned back. You will remember, he said, that my first duty is to the lives aboard this vessel, including his. Hale nodded once. Then our duties align, she said. Sometimes alignment feels like friction. Picard said, You have scheduled a hearing. JAG Advocate Voss requested it, Hale replied. Starfleet wants the legal status clarified, identity, commission, access, and transfer timelines. The longer we leave ambiguity, the more likely someone will exploit it. Ambiguity? Picard felt the word like a pressure in his own chest. Ambiguity was what humanity lived in. Starfleet, for all its exploration, still wanted clean lines. And what, Picard asked slowly, is Starfleet's preferred outcome? Hale's eyes did not soften. Operational readiness restored. Civilian risk relocated off-ship. Narrative stabilized. Picard's hand tightened on the edge of his desk. Narrative, he repeated. Hale's mouth twitched, almost regretful. You know what I mean, she said. 2 datas is a destabilizing story. Picard's voice was low. Then perhaps Starfleet should learn to tolerate true stories, he said. Hale stood. Captain, she said, I respect you. But respect does not change directives. I will be in contact as the hearing approaches. She moved toward the door, paused, and added in a quieter voice, And for what it's worth, when you argued at his hearing years ago, you were right. He is not property. Picard held her gaze. Then act like it, he said. Hale left. The ready room felt emptier and, somehow, more crowded. As announced, Counselor Troy found Data outside the turbolift on Deck 8. He was standing by a window, looking out at the stars, as if the void might provide an answer. His posture was still careful, controlled, but Troy could see the tension in the way his shoulders held themselves, as if his muscles were trying to brace against an impact that hadn't happened yet. Data, she said softly. He turned. His eyes were damp, not with tears, but with the presence of them. Counselor, he said. Troy stepped closer. How are you holding up? She asked. Data's mouth tightened in a way that would have been unfamiliar to him once. Lieutenant Commander Data has resumed my duties, he said. Troy heard what he didn't say, and everyone looks relieved. Es. She kept her voice gentle. And how does that feel? She asked. Data stared past her for a moment as if searching for a word on the stars. Like, my absence is convenient, he said quietly. Troy nodded. Some of the crew are relieved, she admitted, not because they don't care about you, but because your presence has become a reminder that the universe can rewrite them. Data swallowed. They prefer the predictable version, he said. Troy hesitated. They prefer the version who never gets tired, she said, and then, because it mattered, and then they feel ashamed for preferring it. Data's throat tightened. Shame, he understood that now, not as a concept, but as a burn. He looked away. I do not wish to be resented for being alive, he said. Troy's voice softened. You're not being resented, she said. You're being misplaced. People don't know where to put their love when it doesn't fit the role they're used to. Data turned back to her. Do you know where to put it? He asked. Troy smiled faintly, sadness in her eyes. I'm trying, she said. She gestured toward the turbolift. Walk with me, she said. I want to talk about the hearing. Data's stomach tightened. The hearing, he repeated. Troy nodded. JAG Advocate Voss will ask questions about identity and access. Starfleet will try to make this about operational necessity. It is about operational necessity, Data said, and the bitterness in his voice surprised him. Troy stopped walking. It's about power, she corrected gently. Operational necessity is just the language they use so they don't have to say the word control. Data's breath caught. Control, he had valued it. He had called it efficiency. Troy touched his arm lightly, grounding him. You are going to be tempted to defend yourself by proving your usefulness, she said. Don't. Data blinked. Why not? He asked, almost automatically. Troy's eyes held his. Because if you accept their frame, we've already lost, she said. You have to defend your continuity, your right to be you even if you are slower, even if you are afraid. Data stared at her, and the fear in his chest sharpened into something else, determination. He nodded once. I will attempt to speak in that frame, he said. Troy smiled, small and proud. Good, she said. And Data? He looked up. You don't have to do it alone, she said. As accept. Lieutenant Commander Data requested a meeting with Counselor Troy that afternoon. Troy was not surprised. She had expected him to seek her out, not because he needed counseling, but because the ship around him had become strange. He entered her office with crisp efficiency and sat when she gestured. His posture was perfect, his eyes were steady, his expression was the familiar neutral she had watched for years. And yet, as he sat there, Troy felt the odd absence she always felt around him, the blank space where empathy could not touch. She relied on observation instead. Lieutenant Commander, she said softly, thank you for coming. I have determined that clarification is necessary, he replied. There is an entity aboard this ship that resembles me. Troy kept her voice calm. Yes, she said, Mr. Data. The android's gaze sharpened. Starfleet has designated him as a transporter-derived organic entity, he said. Is he, in your assessment, Commander Data? The question was asked as if there were a correct answer hidden in the data. Troy leaned forward slightly. What do you mean by Commander Data? She asked. The android paused. The officer who served aboard this ship, he said. The being who possesses my memories and operational parameters. Troy nodded slowly. Then by that definition, she said, you are Commander Data. The android held still. And Mr. Data? Troy took a breath. Mr. Data is also Data, she said. He is the same person who served here, continuing, living through experiences you did not have. The android's head tilted by a fraction. It is possible he is a duplicate created by transporter malfunction, he said. In that case, he would share some memories and diverge thereafter. Troy chose her words carefully. He diverged, she said, but he is not merely a copy of you. He is the continuation of the life that was transformed. The android's eyes narrowed slightly. Continuity is a philosophical construct, he said. I have operational memories. I have service records. I have the same design. If continuity is required, would it not be better served by the restoration of the original architecture? Troy felt the sharpness beneath his calm, not cruelty, but the quiet certainty of a mind that had once been Data's. Better served for whom? She asked. The android paused. For Starfleet, he said finally. For the ship, for the Federation. Troy's voice softened. And for him? She asked. For the man who is alive right now? The android's gaze held hers. He is alive, he agreed. His status as him is in question. Troy let the silence stretch. Do you feel threatened by him? She asked. The android answered immediately. No, he said. I do not experience threat in an emotional sense. However, his presence introduces ambiguity that may lead to operational dysfunction. Troy nodded. There it is, she said quietly, the desire to resolve ambiguity. The android did not respond. Troy watched him for a moment, then asked, gently, Do you want him removed from the ship? The android's mouth moved as if forming the beginning of a response, then stopped. He looked down at his hands briefly, and Troy was startled by the gesture. It was almost human. I want clarity, he said. Troy nodded. So does Starfleet, she said, but clarity is not always truth. The android's gaze returned to hers, steady. Then what is truth? He asked. Troy felt her throat tighten unexpectedly. Truth is sometimes a story you have to live, she said, not a file you can download. The android held still, as if processing something without a clear algorithm. Troy said softly, If you are a person, as the Federation has already ruled, then you must recognize personhood in him too, even if it's inconvenient. The android nodded once. Understood, he said, but the words sounded like a conclusion reached by logic rather than conviction. He stood. Thank you, counselor, he said, and left. Troy stared at the closed door for a long moment after he was gone. Ask he. Data went to 10 forward that evening because he did not know where else to go. He had learned that when his mind crowded, the presence of other living minds, messy, loud, human, sometimes loosened the pressure. Guinan looked up as he entered. She did not ask why he was there. She simply nodded toward the stool and poured tea without being asked. They brought him aboard, Data said, sitting. Guinan's hands did not pause. I heard, she said. Data stared into the tea. He has my face, he said. He has my voice. He has my certainty. Guinan slid the cup toward him. And you have your heartbeat, she said. Data's fingers closed around the cup. Warmth seeped into his hands. The crew looks at him, Data said quietly, and I can feel their relief. Guinan leaned on the bar. Relief doesn't mean they don't love you, she said. Data looked up. Then what does it mean, he asked. Guinan's eyes held his. It means they're tired, she said. It means they're scared. It means they want the universe to stop being weird. Data swallowed. The universe is not concerned with their preferences, he said. Guinan smiled faintly. No, she said, but Starfleet is. Starfleet likes stories with clean endings. Data's throat tightened. They will choose him, he said. Guinan's gaze sharpened. They will choose a narrative, she corrected, and they will call it a solution. Data stared at his hands. The tremor was worse tonight. He wondered if it was fatigue or anger. Guinan said quietly, They don't know where to put you. The words landed hard because they were simple. Data whispered, I do not know where to put myself. Guinan's voice softened. Start by not letting them put you in a box labeled mistake, she said. You're not a mistake. You're a life. Data's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly. Guinan leaned closer. Do you know the dangerous thing about having your face? She asked. Data frowned. He can impersonate me, he said. Guinan's mouth curved. That too, she said. But I meant something else. People will look at him and think they know you. They'll think the story is finished. Data's chest tightened. And it is not, he said. No, Guinan agreed. It's just harder now. Data sat in silence for a long moment, letting the tea anchor him. When he returned to his quarters, he moved carefully, aware of the subtle changes already happening around him. The door to his quarters took a fraction longer to respond. The computer's voice sounded the same, but there were extra authentication prompts where there had not been before. Protection. He sat at his desk and activated the terminal. Computer, he said, access secure file for the one I was. There was a pause, long enough for his stomach to tighten. Unable to comply, the computer replied. File access restricted. Data stared. I created that file, he said, voice tight. I encrypted it. Lieutenant Commander Data's security credentials are required, the computer replied. Data's breath caught. The ship was using his own name as a gate. I am Data, he said softly. Identity confirmation required, the computer said. Specify credentials. His hands trembled on the edge of the desk. He forced himself to breathe. Computer, he said, display file access logs for the one I was. Access logs displayed, the computer replied. A list of timestamps appeared. Most were his own from the day he created the file. Then there was a new entry. Stardate 4638.4.6, access granted, user, data, LT, CMDR. Data stared at the line until the letters blurred. Lieutenant Commander Data. Not him. His stomach dropped. Heat rushed through him. His heart hammered so hard it felt like it might bruise him from the inside. His private letter, the one he had written as reverence, as warning, as love for the self he had been opened by his own name. Data's throat tightened until he could barely breathe. He whispered, "Someone has been inside my life." Chapter 4, After-Image Conversation. Data did not sleep that night. He lay in the darkness of his quarters with his hand pressed to his chest, listening to the steady insistence of his heart and trying to breathe through the pressure in his throat. Each time he closed his eyes, the line on the screen returned. User, data, LT, CMDR. It was not just that his file had been opened. It was that the ship had accepted his name as authorization and refused him in return. The universe had always been able to hurt him, but this was a different wound, one made by systems that claimed to protect. In the morning, he got up on legs that felt heavy and walked toward engineering. He did it partly because he needed Geordi, and partly because he wanted to prove to himself more than anyone that he could still choose where he went. At the entrance to the Jeffries access corridor that led toward the main engineering section, a security officer stepped into his path. "Mr. Data," the officer said, polite and firm, "restricted area." Data stared at him. The officer was young, perhaps a year out of the academy, his hand hovering near the comm panel as if expecting Data to lunge. "I am requesting access to engineering," Data said. "Per Commander Hale's protocols," the officer replied, "you are not authorized." Data felt anger rise, sharp and hot. He was surprised, not by the anger, but by the way it made his skin feel warm, alive, ready for conflict. "I am going to speak with Lieutenant LaForge," Data said, voice tight. The officer hesitated, then activated his comm badge. "Security to engineering, Mr. Data is requesting." "Let him through." Geordi's voice came over the comm with no hesitation. A moment later, footsteps approached from inside the corridor, and Geordi emerged at a quick pace, visor angled toward Data as if trying to read him and failing. "Hey," Geordi said quietly. He nodded once at the security officer. "He's with me." The officer stepped aside. Data walked into the corridor, the hum of engineering growing louder, and felt a bitter satisfaction at having crossed a line drawn on a pad. Geordi led him into a small side lab, quiet, cluttered with diagnostic equipment and half-assembled components. He shut the door behind them and turned, shoulders tight. "What happened?" Geordi asked immediately. "Troy said you looked—" Data swallowed. His mouth was dry. "My secure file was accessed," he said. Geordi's posture stiffened. "What file?" Data's throat tightened. "A personal document," he said. "Encrypted. I created it after my resignation. It was accessed using Lieutenant Commander Data's credentials." Geordi went still. For a moment, the only sound was the low thrum of the warp core through the bulkheads. "You think he did it," Geordi said finally, voice rough. Data felt shame flare and hated it. "I do not know," he said. "But my name was used as a key to open something that belonged only to me." Geordi's jaw tightened. "Okay," he said. "Okay, we don't assume, we check." Data stared at him. Checking used to be easy, now it was a process that required permission. "I no longer have system access," Data said quietly. Geordi's expression twisted with frustration. "Yeah," he said, "I know." He paced once in the small room, then stopped as if coming to a decision. "We need to talk to him," Geordi said. Data's stomach clenched. "I do not wish to confront him on the bridge," he said, "in public." Geordi's mouth tightened. "I've got a place," he said. Data blinked. 10 forward, he said, to immediately realized that was wrong. 10 forward was never private. Geordi shook his head. "Holodeck," he said. "The workshop program. Neutral ground." Data's chest tightened with a strange combination of dread and gratitude. Geordi was offering him a space where he could be a person, not a problem. "Will he come?" Data asked. Geordi's jaw worked. "If he's Data," he said, "he'll want clarity." Data felt the word clarity like a bruise. Geordi tapped his comm badge. "LaForge to Lieutenant Commander Data," he said. "Can you meet me in Holodeck 2? There was a pause. Then the calm voice Data used to own replied, "Acknowledged. I will arrive in 4 minutes." Geordi looked back at Data. His expression was apologetic and fierce at once. "You ready?" he asked. Data swallowed. His heart hammered as if it were trying to answer for him. "No," he said. Then, after a beat, "Yes." Et expoindo. The holodeck workshop rendered around them with its familiar quiet, half-engineering bay, half-art studio, a hybrid space where tools and paints coexisted without argument. The air smelled faintly of machine oil and clay. Light fell in soft pools from overhead fixtures, as if the program understood that harsh brightness would feel like interrogation. Geordi stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets, as if keeping them from doing something reckless. He looked at Data and then away quickly. "I'll be outside," Geordi said. "Just yell if you need me." Data's throat tightened. "Thank you," he said. Geordi's mouth twitched, a grin that didn't fully form. "Yeah," he said. Then he left and the door slid shut. Data stood alone in the workshop for a moment, listening to his own breathing. The holodeck door opened again. Lieutenant Commander Data entered. He moved with the old precision, the perfect economy of motion Data remembered with a kind of aching envy. He looked around the room, taking in the tools, the clay, the lopsided model of the Enterprise on the work table that human Data had once shaped with trembling hands. Then his gaze fixed on Data. "Mr. Data," he said, voice even. The title landed like a correction. Data felt anger rise and forced it down. "Lieutenant Commander," he replied. The android stepped closer, stopping at a distance that would have been comfortable for conversation between officers. "Lieutenant LaForge indicated you requested this meeting," he said, "for clarification." Data's mouth went dry. "Yes," he said, "for clarification." The android tilted his head slightly. "I am prepared to answer questions regarding my reconstruction and assignment," he said. "If you require a diagnostic comparison, I can." "No," Data said. The abruptness startled him as much as it startled the android. Data took a breath, feeling his ribs expand, feeling the slight ache from last night's sleepless tension. "You may ask me questions as a person," he said carefully, "not as a system you are entitled to evaluate." The android held still. For a fraction of a second, Data saw the slightest pause. A processing delay, a recalibration. "Understood," the android said. Data swallowed. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his fingertips. "My secure file was accessed," he said. "A personal document. It was opened using your credentials." The android did not move. "I did not access any personal file belonging to you," he said immediately. Data stared at him. "You are certain?" he said. "Yes," the android replied. "My activity logs do not indicate such access." The answer was too quick, too clean. And yet, Data realized, it was exactly how he himself would have answered once. He felt his anger waver into uncertainty. "Then someone used your credentials," Data said softly. The android's eyes narrowed slightly. "That is a possibility," he said. "Starfleet security may possess override capability." Data's throat tightened. "So my privacy was violated," he said, "and the ship used your name to do it." The android studied him. "If the file contains information relevant to Federation security," he said, "Starfleet may consider access justified." The familiar logic landed like ice. Data's hands curled into fists. "It contains my thoughts about my continuity," he said, voice tight. "It contains my fear that restoration would be murder. It contains reverence." The android's head tilted. "Reverence," he repeated, as if the word were a data point. Data heard his own earlier obsession echoed back at him, and it made him want to laugh and scream at once. "Yes," he said, "reverence for the life I am living." The android remained calm. "Your life is real," he said. "Your status as Commander Data is uncertain." Data flinched at the phrasing. "You believe you are Commander Data," he said. The android answered without hesitation. "I possess Lieutenant Commander Data's memories and operational parameters," he said. "I possess his design and capabilities. I have been restored to service." Data's chest tightened. "And I," he said quietly, "have lived the transformation. I have lived the fear and the weakness and the time since. I have lived the choice to resign rather than be overwritten." The android regarded him. "It is possible that you are a transporter-created duplicate," he said. Data felt the hot flare of anger again. "It is possible you are a reconstructed copy," he replied. The words hung in the air between them, polite, measured, and brutal. The android's gaze sharpened. "If I am a copy," he said, "then what am I?" Data stared at him, surprised by the question. "Not a calculation, not a rebuttal. A crack in certainty." Data took a breath. "You are a person," he said. The android held still. "And you?" he asked. Data's throat tightened. "I am also a person," he said. The simplicity of it felt like a handhold in a cliff face. The android nodded once. Then Starfleet's attempt to assign a singular identity is an administrative convenience, he said. Data felt a slow, bitter relief. Yes, he said, and administrative convenience has been used to justify violence before. The android looked at the lopsided clay enterprise on the table. Lieutenant LaForge constructed this program, he said. Yes, Data replied. The android's eyes returned to Data. You are adapting, he observed. The words were neutral, but Data heard something underneath them, curiosity perhaps, not empathy, not quite, but attention. Data's fingers unclenched. I am trying, he said. The android nodded again. If your file was accessed using my credentials without my consent, he said, that is also a violation. Data blinked. You consider it a violation, he said. The android's gaze was steady. I am a person, he said. Consent matters. Data felt something loosen in his chest, an unexpected warmth. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. Then help me, Data said, and the words tasted strange. Asking for help still felt like standing naked in a cold room. The android paused for a fraction of a second. Specify assistance, he said. Data forced himself to keep his voice steady. I want to know where the access occurred, he said. Who opened it? From which terminal? The android nodded. I can query the access metadata, he said. However, the request may be logged. Data's mouth tightened. Everything is logged, he said. The android's gaze sharpened, almost approving. Correct, he said. They left the holodeck together. In the corridor, crew members stopped and stared despite themselves, then looked away quickly. Two identical faces walking side by side made the ship feel like a hallucination. Data felt his heart speed up, and he hated the way the attention made him want to shrink. At a secure terminal outside the bridge, the android placed his hand on the panel and initiated an authentication sequence. The computer chirped and granted access without delay. Data watched, bitterness rising. The ship still trusted that face. The android's fingers moved quickly over the controls. Access metadata retrieved, he said. File for the one I was. Entry timestamp 4638.4.6, terminal origin, transporter room 3. Data went cold. Transporter room 3. The room where Sato had tried to steal him. The room where the ship had almost rewritten him again. Data swallowed hard. Was Lieutenant Commander Data in Transporter Room 3 at that time? He asked. The android did not look at him. No, he said. At timestamp 4638.4.6, I was on the bridge. My internal logs confirm continuous presence. Data's throat tightened. Then someone used your credentials, he said. The android's voice remained even. Or, the system accepted my designation via override, he said. Data stared at the terminal display until the letters blurred. He felt his heartbeat pounding in his ears. The ship was repeating patterns, correction, override, theft. He looked at the android. Will you come with me? He asked. The android paused. To Transporter Room 3, he said. Yes, Data replied. The android inclined his head. Yes, he said, and the simplicity of the agreement felt, unexpectedly, like solidarity. Transporter Room 3 was quiet when they arrived. The room smelled faintly of ozone and metal. The transporter pad sat empty, their surface gleaming under overhead lights. The console's displays were dim, not actively engaged. Worf stood near the doorway with a security officer, posture rigid. Hale had anticipated their movement. The ship did not allow private investigations anymore. Mr. Data, Worf said. His eyes flicked to the android beside him. For a moment, his brow furrowed, as if even a Klingon's disciplined mind disliked paradox. Data nodded. Lieutenant Worf, he said. Worf's gaze sharpened. Commander Hale has not authorized your presence here, he said. Data felt anger rise again. My privacy was violated from this room, he said. I am not requesting permission to seek the source. Worf's jaw tightened. He looked toward the android. Lieutenant Worf, the android said calmly, I have retrieved metadata indicating unauthorized file access originating from this transporter console. An investigation is warranted. Worf stared at him, then nodded once, grudging respect flickering across his face. Proceed, he said. Data stepped closer to the console. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out, not for controls, but for steadiness. The metal railing felt cold under his fingers. The android began scanning the console access ports with a handheld diagnostic. Data watched his movements with a mix of familiarity and disorientation. He knew that precision. He remembered it from inside. The security officer shifted, uncomfortable. Then, without warning, the transporter pad emitted a soft chime. Data froze. The transporter console lit up, briefly, erratically, like a system waking from a dream. The pad shimmered. For a fraction of a second, Data felt the sensation he had felt on the day of his transformation, the air thickening, the vibration in his bones, the sense of subspace bending toward him like a hand. Computer, Worf snapped. Status. Transporter diagnostic cycle initiated, the computer replied. No operator detected. The shimmer intensified. And then, with a flicker of blue-white light, a small object appeared on the transporter pad. It was a hyperspanner. Then another shimmer. Another hyperspanner appeared, identical down to the scuff marks on the handle. 2 tools. Same matter, same history, same scratches. Data's stomach lurched. His skin prickled as if a cold wind had blown through him. The android stared at the pad. Object duplication, he said, voice tight in the smallest way. Worf raised his phaser instinctively, as if he could shoot a phenomenon. Data could not move. He stared at the 2 identical tools and felt something in his chest tighten into terror. Not fear of death. Fear of correction. Fear that the universe still had its hand on the transporter stream, still reaching for assumptions, still trying to make the messy world resolve into a single clean answer. Beside him, the android's voice came softly. This is not concluded, he said. Data swallowed hard. No, he whispered, it is not. See Chapter 5, Shards. Geordi held the hyperspanner in his hands like it had insulted him. He turned it over, scanned the handle, traced the shallow scratches near the grit scratches he recognized because the toolset in Transporter Room 3 was supposed to be spotless, and he had once chewed out an ensign for leaving marks on it. He lifted his visor slightly with 2 fingers, as if changing the angle of his perception might change what he was seeing. Tell me I'm hallucinating, he muttered. Worf stood near the doorway, phaser clipped to his belt, but his posture still braced. The security officer beside him looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. On the transporter pad were 2 hyperspanners. Identical. Not the same model, not the same replicator pattern. Identical down to the imperfections. Lieutenant Commander Data stood by the console, hands folded behind his back. His voice was calm, but Geordi could hear the tension in the speed of his words. The transporter diagnostic initiated without operator input, the android said. The system produced matter duplication consistent with pattern buffer echo. Pattern buffer echo, Geordi repeated, like the transporter sneezed. Data. Human Data stood a step back, one hand gripping the railing. His face had gone pale and sweat shone faintly along his hairline. He looked at the 2 tools with the expression of a man watching a ghost make a copy of itself. Geordi's stomach tightened. He hated seeing that look on Data's face. He hated that he understood it now. This can't happen, Geordi said, more to the ship than to anyone in the room. Transporters don't just make copies. Worf's voice was grim. They did, he said. Geordi set the spanner down next to its twin and ran a full scan on both. The readout was, in its own indifferent way, insulting. Same molecular structure, same thermal microvariations, same microscopic toolware. It's like it duplicated history, Geordi whispered. Human Data made a small sound, half breath, half laugh that didn't make it to humor. Yes, he said, that is what it did to me. Geordi looked up sharply. The room went quiet. Geordi forced himself to breathe. Okay, he said, voice steadier. Okay, we treat this like a problem. We figure out how the diagnostic started. We figure out why Transporter Room 3 thinks it needs to correct anything. Human Data's hand tightened on the railing. It is not correcting, he said softly. It is resolving. Geordi's chest tightened. Resolving what? Human Data looked at the duplicated tools. Ambiguity, he said. Lieutenant Commander Data's gaze shifted to him. The android's eyes were steady, but his attention sharpened in a way Geordi recognized as interest. Geordi did not let the moment settle. If he let it settle, it would become philosophy, and he needed engineering. Computer, Geordi said, display transporter access logs for the last 24 hours. The console chirped and produced a list of entries. He scrolled. There were routine checks, calibrations, a standard transport of cargo from the last supply run. Then, buried among the normal entries, were 2 anomalies. 1. The unauthorized access to the computer file Human Data had discovered, originating from this console. 2. A data transfer spike that had no associated transport cycle. Geordi's mouth went dry. That's not a diagnostic, he said. That's a dump. A data dump, Worf said, eyes narrowing, from the pattern buffer. Geordi tapped the screen, bringing up the transfer detail. The amount of data was enormous, far larger than a simple transporter log. It looked like a slice of a pattern record, compressed, fragmented, but valuable. Somebody copied transporter pattern records, Geordi said, voice tight. He looked at the android, and they did it using your credentials. Lieutenant Commander Data's head tilted slightly. My internal logs do not indicate access, he said. Therefore, the credentials were used by an override or an impersonation. Human Data's stomach twisted. He pressed a hand against his chest, feeling his heart pound. Geordi felt a cold anger bloom. So someone has a shard of the buffer, he said. A piece of whatever the transporter thinks a person is. Worf's voice was low. That is a weapon, he said. Geordi didn't correct him. In this sector, with this anomaly, with Data's life hanging on definitions, it might be. He tapped his comm badge. LaForge to Captain Picard, he said. We've got confirmation Transporter Room 3 ran an unauthorized pattern buffer transfer. We have object duplication consistent with Echo, and human Data's secure file was accessed from this console. Picard's voice came through immediately. Understood, the captain said, and Geordi could hear the controlled anger beneath. Prepare a briefing. I'm on my way. Connexinen. The senior staff gathered in the briefing room, but it wasn't just senior staff anymore. Commander Hale stood by the door as if her job were to guard the air. Human Data sat near the end of the table, no uniform, hands folded tightly. Lieutenant Commander Data sat opposite him in Starfleet colors, posture perfect. The two faces on either side of the table made the room feel slightly unreal. Picard took his seat at the head of the table, eyes moving over everyone with a quiet intensity. Report, he said. Geordi brought up the transporter logs on the display. Transporter Room 3 initiated an unauthorized pattern buffer transfer, he said. Big one. It wasn't a transport, it was a copy operation. Riker leaned forward. Someone stole the buffer, he said. A shard of it, Geordi corrected. Not the whole thing, but enough. And while they were in there, they used the same console to access human Data's encrypted file using Lieutenant Commander Data's credentials. Crusher's eyes flashed. So they're not just stealing technology, she said. They're stealing him. Human Data's throat tightened at the word, and he hated that it felt accurate. Picard's gaze moved to Lieutenant Commander Data. Did you access Mr. Data's file? He asked. The android answered calmly. No, Captain, he said. My logs confirm I was on the bridge at the time. Picard looked to Hale. Commander, he said. Hale's expression was controlled. My team did not initiate the access, she said. I did not authorize it. Riker's jaw tightened. Then somebody else did, he said. Worf's voice was clipped. Infiltration, he said, or an insider. Geordi advanced the display to the duplication incident. On top of that, he said, Transporter Room 3 produced object duplication. 2 hyperspanners. Same history, same wear. Troy inhaled softly. The ship is becoming unstable, she said. Human Data spoke before he intended to. It is becoming decisive, he said. Everyone turned toward him. Human Data swallowed hard. The anomaly that changed me, he said, voice quiet, did not tear my pattern apart. It rewrote it. It corrected what it believed were errors. I believe the transporter is primed to do it again, and now someone has taken a piece of that capability. Picard's eyes narrowed. Who would do this? He asked. Hale answered without hesitation. Anyone with resources and no ethics, she said, and anyone with ethics who believes coercion is justified by security. Crusher shot her a look. Hale met it without flinching. Geordi tapped the display again. We might have a lead, he said. Starfleet intelligence flagged chatter about pattern buffer contraband moving through a trading outpost near this sector. Ferengi brokers, independent salvage crews. Riker frowned. You're saying the shard is for sale, he said. Geordi nodded. Or trade, he said, which is worse because then it's harder to trace. Picard looked to Worf. Security assessment, he said. Worf's eyes were hard. If the Tal Shiar acquires transporter rewrite capability, he said, they could infiltrate any vessel, they could replicate officers, they could erase identities. The words landed heavily in the room. Human Data felt his stomach twist. He pictured someone manufacturing him. Manufacturing his face, his voice, his consent, and he had to grip the edge of the table to keep his hands from shaking. Picard's voice was controlled. We will retrieve the shard, he said. Hale immediately said, not with Mr. Data on the away team. Human Data's head snapped up. His anger flared hot and bright. Why? He asked. Hale's gaze did not soften. Because he is the most abductable asset in the room, she said, and because the people selling transporter contraband are exactly the people who would sell him too. Human Data's chest tightened. I am not an asset, he said. Hale's mouth tightened. You are a target, she replied, and targets attract bullets. Picard's gaze flicked between them. Commander Hale, he said, you will keep your language respectful. Hale's eyes stayed on human data. Respect does not change physics, she said quietly. Human data felt the heat of tears behind his eyes and hated it. He forced himself to speak steadily. This contraband contains my life, he said. It contains my privacy. It contains the mechanism by which Starfleet tried to erase me. I will not be removed from my own story because it is convenient. Riker looked at Picard. Worf's expression was rigid. Geordi's jaw clenched, as if he were physically holding back 1,000 words. Picard was silent for a long moment. Then he said evenly, Mr. Data, you are no longer under Starfleet orders. That gives you freedom. It does not remove risk. Human Data swallowed. I understand, he said. I am still choosing. Picard exhaled slowly. Very well, he said. Commander Riker will lead an away team. Lieutenant Worf will accompany. Lieutenant Commander Data will go for technical assessment. Mr. Data will go as civilian witness under escort. Hale's eyes narrowed. Captain? Picard's voice sharpened slightly. Commander Hale, he said, you may assign security. You may not veto my decision. Hale held his gaze for a beat, then nodded once. Understood, she said. 2 security officers, full monitor, transport lock override. Human Data flinched at the phrase transport lock override, remembering Sato's leverage. He forced himself not to speak. Picard turned to Geordi. Mr. LaForge, he said, you will coordinate from the ship. I want transporter systems under constant observation. Geordi nodded. Yes, Captain, he said, and his voice was tight with the knowledge that constant observation was now the ship's default state. Guard rose. Then we proceed, he said. Yes. The outpost looked like it had been assembled by a committee of scavengers who didn't agree on gravity. It hung near a sparse cluster of stars, its structure a patchwork of hull plates and docking rings that didn't quite align. Lights flickered in some sections. Other sections were dark, their corridors hollowed out like teeth. As the Enterprise's shuttle approached, Human Data felt his stomach tighten with a blend of fear and fascination. He could smell the shuttle's recycled air, could hear the faint whine of the inertial dampers, could feel the vibration of the hull under his boots. All of it made the moment vivid in a way his former life had not allowed. Riker sat in the pilot's chair, hands steady on the controls. Worf stood behind him, arms folded, projecting threat as effortlessly as breathing. Lieutenant Commander Data stood near the rear console, posture calm. 2 security officers, 1 human, 1 Bolian, sat near the hatch, watching Human Data more than they watched the outpost. Human Data resented their eyes, and then resented himself for resenting people trying to keep him alive. The shuttle docked with a mechanical clunk. The hatch opened. Air from the outpost rushed in, carrying the smell of oil, spice, and unfiltered bodies. The scent hit Human Data like a wall. His throat tightened, his lungs worked harder. Welcome to the frontier, Riker murmured, almost wry. Human Data followed them into the station. The corridors were crowded with species and voices. Neon advertisements pulsed in languages Human Data couldn't immediately parse. A Bolian vendor shouted about engine parts. A pair of Orions argued in low tones near a doorway. A Ferengi in a patched vest watched the Starfleet group approach with bright, calculating eyes. Human Data felt his heart speed up. Not just fear alertness, life. Riker approached the Ferengi. We're looking for Fennec, he said. The Ferengi's ears twitched. So is everyone who wants to make profit, he said. What do you want with him? Trade, Riker said, voice smooth. The Ferengi's eyes flicked to Lieutenant Commander Data, then to Human Data. His mouth curved in an unpleasant grin. Ah, he said, 2 for 1. Human Data's stomach twisted. Worf stepped forward and the Ferengi's grin faltered slightly. Take us to him, Worf said. The Ferengi swallowed, eyes darting. Yes, yes, he said quickly. This way. They followed through a maze of corridors until they reached a door marked with a crude symbol that might have been a latinum bar if one squinted. Inside, the room was lit warmly, too warmly, almost cozy. Shelves lined the walls, filled with small cases and devices that looked like they had been stolen from a dozen worlds. A low table in the center held a display of isolinear chips and crystalline storage rods arranged like jewelry. Fennec stood behind the table with his hands clasped. He was small even for a Ferengi, with sharp features and eyes that never stopped moving. His smile was wide, oily. Starfleet, he said brightly. I did not expect your patronage. Is this a raid or an investment? Riker stepped forward with practiced diplomacy. We heard you've acquired transporter-related contraband, he said. We're here to take it off your hands. Fennec's eyes gleamed. Contraband, he repeated. Such a judgmental word. I prefer salvage. Lieutenant Commander Data spoke, voice calm. The item you possess is a stolen pattern buffer fragment, he said. Possession violates Federation security statutes. Fennec's ears twitched. Federation statutes, he said, amused. We are not in Federation space. Worf's voice was cold. We can make this space unpleasant, he said. Fennec's smile tightened. He leaned back slightly, calculating. Yes, he said. Starfleet can always make things unpleasant. But unpleasant is expensive. Profit requires negotiation. Human Data stared at the table, at the small sealed case in the center that seemed to draw the room's gravity. It was dark, matte, unremarkable. And yet his skin prickled as if it recognized a piece of itself. He spoke before he fully decided to. That item contains parts of my life, he said. Fennec's eyes flicked to him, interest sharpening. Ah, he said, voice softer. So you are the story. Human Data swallowed. I am a person, he said, not a story. Fennec laughed lightly. Everything is story, he said. Story sells better than metal. Riker held up a hand. Name your price, he said. Fennec's eyes gleamed. For Starfleet, he said, a great price. Lieutenant Commander Data said, Captain Picard will not authorize a Latinum transaction for stolen Federation material. Fennec looked at him with delight. Oh, he said, the machine man speaks like an admiral. I love it. Human Data felt heat rise in his face. He hated how much the phrase machine man still stabbed, even when it was aimed at someone else. Worf stepped closer, looming. Your price, he repeated. Fennec's eyes darted to Worf's ridged forehead, then to the phaser at his hip. He swallowed. 500 bars, he said quickly, of pressed latinum. Riker did not flinch. No, he said. Fennec shrugged, as if the refusal were expected. Then perhaps, he said smoothly, you leave, and I sell to someone who appreciates rarity. Human Data's heart hammered. He could feel fear and anger braided together, tight as a cable. Someone already appreciates it, Human Data said, voice quiet. Fennec's ears twitched. Oh, he said. Human Data looked directly at him. Who brought it to you? He asked. Fennec's smile tightened. I protect my suppliers, he said. Suppliers protect my profit. Human Data felt his throat tighten. He took a breath and forced the words out, not as threat, but as truth. If you sell that shard, he said, you will be noticed by people who do not negotiate. Fennec's eyes narrowed. Starfleet does not scare me, he said. Human Data shook his head once. I am not speaking about Starfleet, he said. For the first time, Fennec's smile faltered. In the back of the room, a figure shifted slightly in shadow. An individual who had been standing near a shelf as if browsing, their posture too still, their attention too focused. Human Data's skin prickled. The figure's gaze met his for a fraction of a second, and something cold moved through him. The figure looked away. Fennec's voice dropped. I do not know what you mean, he said quickly. Human Data leaned forward slightly. He could feel his heart pounding, could taste metal in his mouth the way he did when he ran. Fear was present. He spoke anyway. You are afraid, he said. Fennec's eyes widened, offended. I am a businessman, he snapped. You are afraid, Human Data repeated more gently, because someone named Vren has been asking about transporter fragments in this sector. The Ferengi's face went still. Worf's eyes narrowed. Vrin, he said. Talshiar. Riker's posture shifted subtly. You've been talking to Romulans, he said, and his voice was polite in a way that promised consequences. Fennec's hands fluttered. No, he said quickly. No, I do not talk to Romulans. I talk to customers. Customers sometimes have pointed ears. The shadowed figure in the back moved again, almost imperceptibly. Human Data's stomach tightened. The air felt too thick, the room too small. He could sense something coiling. Riker said evenly. You are going to give us the shard. Fennec's eyes darted. I cannot, he said. If I do, I lose profit and I gain enemies. Human Data's voice softened. If you sell it, he said, you gain enemies anyway, you just delay them. Fear is not a plan, Fennec. Fennec stared at him, breathing faster. The Ferengi's skin had gone paler around the mouth. Human Data watched him and realized something with sudden clarity. Fear made people tell the truth. Not because fear was noble, but because fear cracked their scripts. Human Data said quietly, if you give it to us, Captain Picard will not pay you 500 bars, but he can give you something else. Protection, a window to disappear. Fennec's ears twitched violently. Protection, he whispered. The shadowed figure took a step. Worf's hand went to his phaser. Late. The shadow moved with sudden speed, lunging toward the table. A hand flashed out, snatching the sealed case. Worf drew his phaser in one smooth motion. "Stop," he barked. The figure turned, and for a heartbeat, human Data saw the face clearly. Sharp, composed, eyes too cold to belong in a market stall. "Gomolan?" "Sub-Commander Vryn sends regards," the Romulan said calmly, and then hurled a small sphere to the floor. Smoke exploded, thick, black, bitter. Human Data's eyes burned instantly, his lungs seized. He coughed, body convulsing, panic spiking as his vision vanished. In the darkness, he heard Worf's roar, heard phaser fire crackle, heard Riker shouting orders. He heard the android's voice, calm and sharp. "Riker, the exit is." Human Data stumbled, hands out, searching for something solid. His foot caught on a chair. He fell hard, pain flashing through his shoulder. Pain. Bright. Immediate. He gasped, tasted smoke and dust, and his heart hammered like it wanted to escape his ribs. Strong hands grabbed his arm and hauled him up. Worf's voice was a growl in his ear. "Move," Worf snarled. Human Data ran. His legs burned within seconds. His lungs screamed. Each breath felt like dragging air through fire. He could hear the android's footsteps behind them, steady, tireless. They burst into the corridor outside the stall. People screamed. A bullion vendor overturned a cart. Lights flickered. The Romulan emerged ahead, moving with practiced speed through the crowd, the stolen case in hand. Worf surged forward like a projectile. The Romulan turned, raised a disruptor, and Lieutenant Commander Data stepped into the line of fire. The disruptor bolt struck him and dispersed across his chest plating harmlessly, a flash of energy that would have burned human flesh. The android did not flinch. His hand shot out, gripping the Romulan's wrist with mechanical certainty, twisting until the disruptor clattered to the deck. The Romulan hissed and tried to pull away. The android tightened his grip. "Release the stolen item," Lieutenant Commander Data said, voice calm. The Romulan's eyes narrowed. "You are the one they rebuilt," he said, and his tone held disgust. "A convenience. A decoy." The words hit human Data like a knife because they were meant for the android but landed on both. Worf grabbed the Romulan by the collar and slammed him into the bulkhead with a thud that made human Data's teeth rattle. "Where is Vryn?" Worf growled. The Romulan laughed through clenched teeth. "Everywhere," he rasped. Riker stepped in, voice hard. "Give me the case," he said. The Romulan's fingers loosened. The sealed case dropped into Riker's hand. Alarms began to blare outpost security, responding late, angry, indifferent to nuance. Riker looked around. "We're done here," he snapped. "Move." They ran. Human Data's legs felt like they were made of lead by the time they reached the shuttle. He tasted blood in his mouth where he had bitten his tongue. His vision swam. The security officers hustled him inside and sealed the hatch. The shuttle detached with a jolt. As the outpost fell away behind them, human Data leaned back against the bulkhead and tried to breathe. Riker held the sealed case in his hand as if it might bite. "We've got it," he said. Human Data stared at the case, heart still hammering. "Yes," he whispered, "we have it." Lieutenant Commander Data looked at him. "You are injured," he observed. Human Data blinked, feeling pain throb in his shoulder. "I am aware," he said, and the weakness of the words made him want to laugh. Worf's gaze remained hard. "The Tal Shiar is involved," he said. Riker nodded once, grim. "Yeah," he said, "and they just put a name on it." Then T. In engineering, Geordi opened the case with careful hands. The shard inside was small, a crystalline storage wafer encased in a shielding sleeve, its surface etched with microscopic patterns. It looked harmless, like any other piece of tech. Geordi ran a scan and swore softly. Crusher stood beside him, eyes narrowed. Troy hovered near the doorway, drawn by the tension like gravity. Human Data sat on a stool, shoulders hunched, holding an ice pack against his shoulder. He watched the scan results appear with a sick feeling in his gut, as if he were watching his own blood in a vial. Geordi's voice was tight. "This isn't just transporter logs," he said. Lieutenant Commander Data stepped closer. "Clarify," he said. Geordi swallowed. "It's a composite," he said. "There's a partial positronic mapping in here, like someone tried to snapshot a SUM-type neural net." The android held still. Geordi's eyes flicked to human Data. "And there's biological neural data," he said. "Human." Human Data's mouth went dry. "Mine," he said. Crusher's eyes sharpened. "How do you know?" she asked. Geordi's jaw clenched. "The pattern markers match the scans you took," he said. "The ones you shared with Starfleet Medical." Crusher went very still. Human Data felt his stomach drop. The room tilted. His heart hammered. "They are trading my brain," he whispered. Crusher's voice went cold. They're trading your life, she said. Lieutenant Commander Data stared at the display. This indicates an attempt to create a hybrid reconstruction, he said, or to develop a method to map organic consciousness into synthetic architecture. Human Data swallowed. They want to prove continuity, he said, voice raw, or they want to weaponize the question. Geordi looked at him, and for a moment his visor seemed useless. His grief was written in his mouth, in the tightness of his jaw. Yeah, Geordi said softly, and they're not going to stop. Human Data pressed the ice pack harder against his shoulder as if pressure could keep him from unraveling. He realized, with sudden terror, that the shard was not just contraband. It was a seed. Chapter 6, The Hearing Again. They held the hearing in the briefing room because it was the closest thing the Enterprise had to a courtroom. They stripped the room of its usual intimacy and replaced it with formality, additional lighting, hollow cameras mounted at the corners, a secure subspace uplink that hummed faintly like an insect under the table. A small emblem of the Federation had been placed at the head of the room as if a symbol could make the air less sharp. Human Data sat in a plain chair, hands folded tightly in his lap. He had dressed carefully, civilian clothing again, neat and unremarkable. The choice felt like surrender and defiance at once. He wanted to wear his uniform. He wanted to stand as the officer he had been. He had resigned. So, he sat as a man without rank and tried to remember that rank had never been the measure of a life. Across the table, Lieutenant Commander Data sat in uniform, posture perfect, eyes steady. The crew's gazes kept flicking toward him, then away, as if looking too long might decide something. Commander Hale stood at the side of the room, hands clasped behind her back. She looked like a guard and insisted she was not. Picard sat at the head of the table, expression controlled so tightly it looked carved. Riker and Troy sat to his right, Crusher sat to his left, jaw set like a weapon. Worf stood near the door, still as stone. The subspace uplink activated with a soft chime. A holographic image resolved above the table, Jag Advocate Renari Voss, her uniform immaculate, her expression neutral in the way of someone trained to flatten human mess into legal language. Beside her, in a second holographic window, Admiral Nakamura appeared, his face sharper than it had been during the earlier inquiry. Voss began without preamble. This proceeding is convened to clarify the legal and operational status of two entities currently aboard the USS Enterprise, she said. 1. Lieutenant Commander Data, reconstructed and commissioned under Cybernetics Directive 12A. 2. The transporter-derived organic entity designated Mr. Data. Human Data flinched at the word designated. Voss's gaze moved to him. For the record, she said, state your name. Human Data swallowed. Data, he said. Voss's expression did not change. For clarity, she said, you are referred to in this proceeding as Mr. Data. The correction was polite. It still felt like a blade. Human Data took a breath. Understood, he said, and his voice sounded smaller than he wanted. Voss's gaze shifted to the android. Lieutenant Commander, she said, state your name for record. Data, the android replied, calm. Voss nodded as if satisfied. This proceeding is not a relitigation of the established personhood ruling, she said. Both individuals are treated as legal persons. The question is identity attribution, commission continuity, and access to sensitive systems. Picard leaned forward slightly. Identity is not a resource to be allocated, he said. Voss looked at him. Captain Picard, she said, Starfleet allocates commission authority. It is not poetic, but it is how the institution functions. Picard's jaw tightened. And if the institution's function violates the spirit of the Federation's ideals, he said quietly, then the institution must change. Admiral Nakamura's mouth tightened. Captain, he said, this is not a philosophical seminar. There are operational implications. Picard's gaze did not waver. There are always operational implications, he said. That does not absolve us from ethics. Voss lifted a hand slightly. We will proceed, she said. Starfleet's position will be presented first. She gestured to Nakamura. The Admiral's voice was clipped. Mr. Data is a transporter anomaly, he said. An organic entity produced by an unprecedented malfunction. He has no commission. His physiology is vulnerable. His cognitive capacity is reduced compared to the original officer. He represents a security risk because hostile actors may exploit him to access sensitive information. Human Data felt heat rise in his face. His hands tightened in his lap until his fingers ached. Nakamura continued. Lieutenant Commander Data has been reconstructed from original schematics and archived records. He meets the operational needs of a Galaxy-class flagship. He is the continuation of the commissioned officer's service record. He will retain access necessary to perform his duties. Picard's voice was cold. You speak as if the officer's service record is the person, he said. Nakamura's gaze hardened. Starfleet speaks as if a flagship requires an operations officer who can function, he said. We are not discussing affection, we are discussing readiness. Choi's voice was quiet. Affection is not irrelevant, she said. People are not machines. Nakamura ignored her. Mr. Data will be transferred to a secure Starfleet facility for evaluation and civilian placement, he said. He will be barred from sensitive systems until security can be assured. Crusher's mouth tightened. And if he refuses the facility? She asked, voice sharp. Voss answered. He retains autonomy, she said. He may refuse medical intervention. He may refuse restoration. However, Starfleet can deny him access and can require his relocation off active-duty vessels. Human Data swallowed. The word relocation felt clean. It sounded like moving cargo. Picard spoke, voice controlled. Then Starfleet's position is that Mr. Data is free, he said, as long as his freedom occurs somewhere out of sight. Nakamura's eyes narrowed. Starfleet's position is that his freedom cannot compromise the lives of thousands, he said. Picard's gaze sharpened. And my position, he said quietly, is that you cannot protect lives by treating a person as collateral. Voss lifted a hand again. Captain Picard, present your response, she said. Picard straightened, and in the motion Human Data saw the old courtroom Picard, the man who had once fought for a synthetic being's right to choose. Lieutenant Commander Data's personhood was affirmed not because he was operationally valuable, Picard said. It was affirmed because he was sentient and autonomous. Those principles do not become optional when the institution is uncomfortable. He gestured slightly toward Human Data. This man is not a malfunction to be contained. He is the continuation of a life that was transformed against his will, Picard said. He has lived experiences. The reconstructed officer did not live. He has made choices under fear. He has formed relationships in this state. Starfleet cannot erase that continuity simply because it is inconvenient. Nakamura's expression hardened. Continuity, he said. You can't even define it. Picard's voice remained steady. We define it the way humans have always defined it, he said. By lived experience, by memory, by relationship, by choice. Voss's gaze moved to Human Data. Mr. Data, she said, do you consider yourself Commander Data? Human Data's heart hammered, his throat tightened. He wanted to answer with certainty. He did not have it. He took a breath and forced himself to speak anyway. I consider myself Data, he said. I consider myself the same person who served aboard this ship. I have continued through transformation into this life. Voss's voice was neutral. Can you prove that continuity? She asked. Human Data's mouth went dry. He thought of logs, of file access, of the way even his private letter had been opened under another Data's credentials. No, he admitted. Not in the way you mean. I can describe my memories. I can identify personal details and service history. But I cannot prove that continuity is not an illusion created by information. Toy's hand hovered near his, offering silent support without touching. Human Data continued, voice quiet. I can only tell you what it feels like, he said, and I understand that feeling is not admissible evidence to Starfleet. Voss watched him. We have your emotional statement on record, she said. Crusher leaned forward. If you're going to treat him like a security variable, she said sharply, then you should also treat his health as relevant. Voss turned slightly. Dr. Crusher, she said, proceed. Yeah, proceed. Crusher's expression was controlled fury. Mr. Data is biologically human, she said. His brain is biological. Any procedure that maps his consciousness into a reconstructed positronic net is invasive and destructive. You can call it restoration, you can call it transfer. From a medical perspective, it is brain death. Nakamura's eyes narrowed. That is your philosophical interpretation, he said. Crusher's voice sharpened. No, she snapped. That is my clinical interpretation. If you destroy the neural substrate that currently holds his consciousness, you destroy this life. If you make a copy, you make a copy. Do not pretend you are saving him. Silence pressed hard against the room. Voss looked at Crusher. No forced intervention is being proposed at this time, she said. Crusher's gaze was ice. It was proposed, she said. It was attempted. And now someone has stolen transporter pattern buffer data and a fragment of his neural mapping. If you want to talk about security, talk about that. Voss's gaze flicked to Hale. Commander Hale, she said. Is that accurate? Hale's jaw tightened. Yes, she said. A Tal Shiar-associated actor attempted to acquire the shard. The Enterprise retrieved it. We are investigating infiltration vectors. Nakamura's mouth tightened. Which proves my point, he said. He is a target. Targets attract hostile action. Troy's voice was soft and dangerous. Targets are still people, she said. Voss turned to Troy. Counselor, she said, you may provide testimony regarding continuity. Hua drew a breath. Continuity is not only memory, she said. It is narrative. It is the accumulation of choice under constraint. Mr. Data has been living in a body that gets tired and afraid. He has adapted. He has changed in ways that cannot be replicated by loading a file into a brain, because the change is not just information. It is embodied. Nakamura's expression hardened. Embodied doesn't make it safer, he said. Troy met his gaze. Safer for whom? She asked quietly. Voss held up a hand. We will now hear from Lieutenant Commander Data, she said. The android stood smoothly. He looked at Voss with steady eyes. Lieutenant Commander, Voss said, do you consider yourself the same entity as Mr. Data? The android paused. Human Data felt his heart hammer, felt his palms sweat. He realized he was afraid of the answer in a way that went beyond fear of exile. If the android claimed him as an error, Starfleet would believe it. If the android claimed him as him, the universe would become messier. The android spoke. I consider myself Data, he said. I possess operational memories consistent with service history aboard the USS Enterprise. I have been reconstructed according to original schematics. I have been commissioned under Starfleet authority. Voss's gaze was steady. Do you consider yourself the continuation of the commissioned officer's identity? She asked. The android's eyes flicked briefly to human Data. Then back. I cannot prove continuity, the android said. The room went still. Geordi's breath caught audibly. Troy's eyes widened. Even Hale looked startled by the phrasing. The android continued, voice calm. I can assert that I am a person. I can assert that I possess memories and behaviors consistent with Lieutenant Commander Data's recorded history. However, the existence of Mr. Data demonstrates that continuity cannot be established by structural similarity alone. Nakamura's mouth tightened. Are you refusing your commission? He snapped. The android turned his gaze to the Admiral. No, he said. I am refusing the implication that my commission renders Mr. Data less real. Human Data felt something in his chest loosen, just slightly. Voss's expression remained neutral, but her eyes sharpened. Then what do you propose? She asked. The android's voice remained steady. Recognize both of us as persons with rights, he said. Assign commission authority according to Starfleet necessity if required. But do not conflate commission with identity. Mr. Data and I are separate individuals with shared history. The words landed like a new door opening in the corridor. Picard looked at the android with a brief, fierce respect. Nakamura looked like he had bitten something sour. Voss's voice was measured. Understood, she said. She looked down at her pad, then up again. This panel will now render a determination, she said. First, both individuals are recognized as legal persons with full Federation rights. Second, Starfleet Commission cannot be duplicated. For operational continuity, the commission and title, Lieutenant Commander Data, remains assigned to the reconstructed officer. Third, Mr. Data will be treated as a civilian under Federation protection and will be required to relocate off the USS Enterprise within 10 days to minimize security exposure. Human Data felt his stomach drop. 10 days. Voss continued. Mr. Data will not be subjected to forced medical intervention. However, he will not retain access to sensitive systems aboard Starfleet vessels without explicit authorization. His communications and movement may be monitored only under lawful security protocols and with documented oversight. Hale's jaw tightened. Oversight was a leash on her leash. Voss concluded, this determination is effective immediately. The holographic images faded. The room was silent. Human Data stared at the empty space where the panel had been. His heart hammered. He felt heat behind his eyes. Picard's voice was quiet. I am sorry, he said, and it sounded like a personal apology rather than a command statement. Human Data swallowed hard. It is consistent, he said, and the bitterness in the words surprised him. Crusher stood abruptly. He's coming to sickbay, she said, now. Human Data blinked. Doctor? Crusher's eyes were sharp. Don't argue, she snapped, then softened a fraction. I need to check you. Human Data stood, unsteady. The room swayed slightly. Troy moved as if to help, then hesitated. Human Data nodded at her anyway, grateful. As he walked toward the door, Lieutenant Commander Data stepped closer. Mr. Data? The android said quietly. Human Data looked at him. The android's voice remained calm. Your personhood is recognized, he said. That is not nothing. Human Data's throat tightened. No, he whispered, it is not. In sickbay, Crusher ran her scan with hands that moved too fast for how carefully she was trying to keep her face composed. Human Data watched the readout. He did not understand the metrics fully anymore, but he recognized the look on Crusher's face. Her mouth tightened. Her eyes narrowed. Her anger sharpened into fear. What? Human Data asked, voice small. Crusher didn't answer immediately. She swallowed, then said, very quietly, your markers are worse. Human Data's stomach dropped again. Worse, he repeated. Crusher looked up at him. Your cells are showing accelerated stress, she said. Your neurological proteins, there's abnormal folding, not catastrophic yet, but trending. Human Data felt cold spread through his hands. How much time? He whispered. Crusher's eyes softened with something that looked dangerously like grief. I don't know, she said, and I hate that I don't know. Chapter 7. Clockwork Flesh. The biobed felt too narrow. It wasn't that it had changed, it was that Data had changed. He was suddenly aware of edges, of the way the mattress pressed against his back, of the way his shoulder ached where he'd fallen on the outpost, of the faint soreness in his throat from too many hours spent swallowing fear. He lay still while Dr. Crusher moved a tricorder over him with brisk precision. Again? Data asked quietly. Crusher's eyes did not leave the readout. Again, she said, and don't make that tone at me. Data almost laughed. The sound didn't fully form. I did not intend a tone, he said. Crusher snorted. You're human now. You have tones whether you intend them or not. Data's chest tightened. It was easier to be irritated at her than to be afraid of what she was reading. Your markers are worse, Crusher repeated, as if saying it twice might make it less vague. Data swallowed. Define worse, he said, then regretted the request. He used to define everything without asking. Crusher set the tricorder down and finally looked at him. The anger that usually lived in her eyes was still there, but behind it was something softer and more dangerous. Your cells are under stress, she said. Not like a human with a cold, not like a human who's overworked, like a system that was fabricated and is now drifting. Data stared at her. The word drifting made him think of transporter shimmer and duplicated spanners. Crusher continued, voice careful. Your neurological proteins are showing abnormal folding patterns, she said. It could mean nothing. It could mean everything. It could plateau. It could accelerate. Data's throat tightened. How much time? He asked again, because the question had become a hunger. Crusher's jaw clenched. I don't know, she said, and I hate that I don't know. Data closed his eyes for a moment and listened to his heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. His body kept insisting on the present while his mind tried to reach into the future. The sickbay doors slid open. Geordi entered at a quick pace, visor angled toward the biobed. He looked like he hadn't slept. His shoulders were tight with the strain of holding too many impossible problems in his hands at once. How is he? Geordi asked immediately. Crusher's mouth tightened. Not great, she said. Geordi swore softly under his breath. He stepped closer to the biobed, hands hovering as if he didn't know what to do with them. Data, he said, voice rough. I'm sorry. Data opened his eyes. Geordi's face was a mix of anger and fear and something that hurt more, helplessness. It is not your fault, Data said. Geordi gave a short, humorless laugh. Yeah, he said, tell my brain that. Crusher crossed her arms. We're not going to pretend this is solved by wishing, she said. We need options. Data's chest tightened. Options, he repeated. Crusher's gaze was sharp. Option 1, we do nothing except monitor, she said. Option 2, you allow Starfleet to perform their so-called restoration and kill this version of you. Data flinched. Crusher's voice softened only slightly. Or, Option 3, we find something that supports your brain without replacing it. Geordi's mouth tightened. He glanced at Crusher, then at Data. I've been working on something, he said. Data's heart sped up. A restoration, he said, and the fear in his voice made him hate himself. Geordi shook his head quickly. No, he said, not that, not overriding you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device, a flat, curved piece of material threaded with faintly glowing filaments. It looked like a cross between a medical patch and a piece of bioneural circuitry. It's an exocortex, Geordi said. Data stared. A cortical implant, he said, voice tight. No, Geordi said again, sharper. He took a breath and forced his tone softer. No, it's external, wearable, non-invasive. It reads surface neural activity and provides support memory indexing, sensory filtering, computational assistance. Crusher's eyes narrowed. That's ambitious, she said. Geordi's jaw tightened. So is staying alive, he said. Data felt a strange mix of emotions. Hope, anger, fear, relief collide in his chest. You want to attach a machine to my brain, Data said quietly. Geordi flinched. I want to give you a cane, he said. Data blinked. Geordi leaned forward, voice intense. That's what it is, he said. A cane, not a replacement spine, not a new body, not a copy, a tool you choose to use. You keep you. Data's throat tightened. The words should have comforted him. Instead, they made him ache. Because they acknowledged something he had been avoiding since sickbay, since the first cognitive test, since he'd fumbled the violin. He needed help. He hated needing help. He hated hating it. Crusher's voice was cautious. Geordi, even non-invasive interfaces can have side effects, she said. Neural overstimulation, dependency, signal misinterpretation. Geordi nodded, jaw clenched. I know, he said. That's why I didn't just slap it on him. That's why I'm bringing it to both of you. Data stared at the device. It was small. It looked harmless. And yet, it represented a future where he survived by becoming machine-adjacent. His mind flicked back to the transporter's correction, to being rewritten by assumptions. He did not want to be corrected again. But he wanted to live. If I wear this, Data said slowly, who controls the data it collects? Geordi's eyes widened slightly, then softened. You do, he said. That's the point. Crusher nodded. And I do, she said, voice firm, medically. Data swallowed. And Starfleet? He asked. Silence. Geordi's mouth tightened. No Starfleet telemetry, he said, and the fierceness in his tone startled Data. No hidden feeds, no for your safety backdoors. Data felt warmth bloom in his chest, painful and bright. I require an off switch, he said. Geordi nodded immediately. Hard off, he said. Physical, yours. Data took a breath. And privacy boundaries, he said. If it indexes memory, I require assurance that it will not record me for later analysis. Crusher's eyes softened. You're learning boundaries, she murmured. Data's mouth tightened. I am learning survival, he said. Geordi swallowed and looked at Crusher. Can we do it? He asked. Can we make it safe enough to try? Crusher stared at the device, then at Data. Her voice was quiet. We can try, she said. Try is not guarantee. Data closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of blank doors. He thought of waking one day and finding them gone. He opened his eyes. I consent to a trial, he said. Geordi's shoulders loosened so suddenly it looked like relief physically pulled him downward. He let out a breath he had been holding too long. Okay, he whispered. Okay. The sickbay door slid open again. Lieutenant Commander Data entered. He moved with perfect stillness, but Human Data noticed something he hadn't expected. The android's eyes lingered briefly on the exocortex device. Attention, curiosity, perhaps even concern. Crusher's posture tightened. What do you want? She snapped, defensive. The android's voice was calm. I was informed of Mr. Data's medical decline, he said. I wish to offer assistance. Geordi's jaw tightened. He looked away, as if the offer itself were an accusation. Human Data swallowed. What assistance? He asked. Lieutenant Commander Data nodded toward the device. Signal processing, he said. My architecture includes pattern recognition routines relevant to neural mapping. If this exocortex is to remain non-invasive, its interpretive algorithms must be conservative. I can contribute. Geordi's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You mean you can make it better, he said, voice rough. The android met his gaze. Yes, he said simply. Geordi's mouth twisted. Of course you can, he muttered. Human Data felt envy flare hot, sharp, and then shame, because the envy was aimed at a face that had once been his. Troy's voice came softly from the doorway. Geordi, she said, it's okay to feel that. Geordi looked up, startled. Troy's eyes were gentle, but there was no pity in them. Human Data exhaled slowly. Geordi, he said, voice quiet, I am afraid of dying. I am also afraid of being replaced. Both are true. Geordi stared at him, and something in his expression broke, just enough to let the truth through. I miss you, Geordi whispered. Human Data's throat tightened until he could not speak. He nodded once, hard. Then, because honesty was the only thing that felt solid, he said, I am still here. Geordi swallowed. His jaw worked. Then he looked at the android. Help, Geordi said, and the word sounded like surrender and choice at once. But if you turn this into a project where you get to be the hero and he gets to be the patient, I swear. The android cut in, calm. Understood, he said. My assistance will be limited to algorithmic support. Mr. Data's consent parameters will be treated as hard constraints. Crusher's eyes narrowed. You'll follow a patient's consent, she said, voice sharp. The android looked at her. Yes, he said, consent matters. Human Data felt something unexpected, a thin thread of respect toward the reconstructed being who had been delivered as his replacement. Before he could speak, the sickbay doors slid open again. Commander Hale entered with a pad in hand and an expression that made Data's stomach tighten immediately. Hale's calm had a different edge now, less procedural, more urgent. Captain Picard has received updated directives, Hale said. Mr. Data's relocation is being accelerated. Crusher's face went hard. No, she said flatly. Hale met her gaze. Yes, she replied. Security exposure has increased. Tal Shiar involvement is confirmed. Starfleet Command wants him off the Enterprise within 24 hours. Human Data felt his chest tighten into panic. 24 hours. The ship around him suddenly felt like it was already behind glass. Geordi's voice was raw. You can't just, he started. Hale's tone remained even. I can, she said, and they are. Crusher stepped forward, anger blazing. He is medically unstable, she snapped. Moving him now could kill him. Hale's eyes flicked to Data, and for a moment there was something like regret there. Doctor, she said, leaving him here could kill him too, or get other people killed. Human Data swallowed hard. He could feel his heartbeat. He could feel the press of time like gravity. He looked at Geordi, at Crusher, at the android who wore his face. He whispered, I am tired of being moved like cargo. Hale's expression tightened. Then help me keep you alive, she said quietly, because right now the galaxy is reaching for you. Chapter 8, Abduction. The day he was scheduled to leave the Enterprise, Data walked the corridors as if memorizing them by touch. He told himself it was irrational. The ship was not a planet with seasons and smell and weather. It was steel and light and hum, consistent from day to day. He had lived on it for years without needing to imprint its details into memory, because he had always assumed it would be there, an environment, a constant. Now the corridors felt like a home being taken away. His breathing was shallow without his permission. He stopped outside the door to the bridge and stared at the panel, the indicator light glowing steady. He did not have access. He did not have a station. He did not have a combadge to announce him. He pressed his hand lightly against the wall instead, feeling the faint vibration of the ship through his palm. The Enterprise's heartbeat mechanical, constant, answered his. Behind him, footsteps approached. Mr. Data. Worf's voice was clipped, but there was something else in it now. An undercurrent Data had learned to recognize as care expressed through restraint. Data turned. Worf stood in full uniform, phaser at his belt, posture rigid. A security officer hovered a few steps behind him, eyes scanning the corridor. You have been assigned as my escort, Data said. Worf inclined his head. Yes, he said. Commander Hale requested it. Captain Picard agreed. Data's throat tightened. You do not have to, he said quietly. Worf's brow furrowed. That is not how duty functions, he said. Data almost smiled. In my experience, he said, that is exactly how duty functions. Worf's mouth tightened. You fought, he said, and the words were blunt in the way of someone who did not know how to soften them. Against Sado, against Starfleet, you did not submit. Data's chest tightened with warmth and embarrassment. I was afraid, he said. Worf nodded once. Yes, he said, and you acted anyway. There was respect in the simple statement, not the respect given to an officer's rank, the respect given to a life that refused to be corrected by force. Data swallowed. Thank you, he said. Worf's gaze shifted toward the bridge doors, then back. You are not permitted access, he said, as if stating it would make the prohibition less personal. Data looked at the door again. I know, he said. I am saying goodbye from the outside. Worf held still for a moment, then said quietly, Goodbyes are not always honorable. Data blinked. What do you mean? He asked. Worf's jaw tightened. Sometimes, he said, they are a form of surrender. Data felt the truth in that and hated it. He took a breath. Then I will not surrender, he said. Worf studied him for a moment. Good, he said. Come, you should eat before departure. Data followed him down the corridor. In 10 forward, Guinan was waiting as if she had known the exact minute he would arrive. The lounge was quieter than usual, the lighting soft, the stars beyond the windows sliding past like indifferent witnesses. A few crew members sat scattered, voices low. Guinan poured tea and placed it in front of him. You look like you're trying not to feel anything, she said. Data's mouth tightened. I am trying to function, he said. Gwyneth's eyes held his. Function isn't the only thing you get to be, she said. Data stared at the tea. Starfleet is moving me, he said quietly. Gwyneth nodded. I know, she said. How does that feel? Data's throat tightened. Like I am being managed, he said. Like my life is an administrative inconvenience. Guinan leaned closer. And underneath that? She asked. Data's hand moved to his chest without thinking. The heartbeat was steady, loud. Grief, he whispered, and anger, and fear. Guinan nodded as if those were acceptable answers, because they were. Good, she said. Name it. Don't let it become a fog you choke on. Data swallowed. Someone stole my private file, he said, voice low. They accessed it using his credentials. Gwynen's gaze sharpened. The other one, she said. Data nodded once. They used my name, he whispered. And now, he stopped. His throat tightened. He could not say the next part without feeling sick. Guinan's voice softened. And now it's not yours anymore, she said. Data's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly. Yes, he said. Guinan reached out and placed her hand briefly over his fingers on the cup. Warmth seeped into him. Privacy is a kind of skin, she said quietly. You only notice it when it's torn. Data stared at her. How do I repair it? He asked. Guinan's eyes held his. Sometimes you can't, she said. Sometimes all you can do is decide what you will show willingly so nobody can steal it to shame you. Data swallowed. The idea felt like standing in open air without armor. Guinan leaned in. They're going to try to make you small, she said. Not because you deserve it, because it makes them feel less afraid. Data's breath trembled. I do not want to be small, he said. Guinan's mouth curved. Then don't, she said. He left 10 forward with the taste of tea and the weight of her words in his chest. In sickbay, Crusher insisted on a final scan before departure. She moved around him with sharp efficiency, annoyance covering fear. If you collapsed on that starbase, she muttered, I want it on record that I told them it was a stupid timeline. Data's mouth tightened. Doctor, Crusher held up a hand. Don't thank me, she snapped. Just promise me you'll keep eating and sleeping and reporting symptoms. You're not allowed to be stoic. Stoicism is just self-neglect in a pretty uniform. Data almost smiled. I am not wearing a uniform, he said. Crusher's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. I know, she said, and the softness hurt more than the anger. Geordi arrived as Crusher finished, carrying a small case. He looked like he had been holding his breath since the hearing. He held the case out. It's not finished, he said, but it's enough for now. Sensory filter, memory indexing assist, nothing invasive. Data stared at the case. The exocortex, he said. Geordi nodded, jaw tight. Wear it if you want, he said. Don't if you don't. But if your body starts drifting, I want you to have something that steadies you. Data's throat tightened. Thank you, he said. Geordi swallowed. Yeah, he said. Just don't die on me, okay? The words were blunt, human, unpolished. They landed in Data's chest like a hand. Data nodded once. I will attempt, he said. Geordi let out a shaky breath that sounded too close to a laugh. That's you, he muttered. In the corridor outside sickbay, Lieutenant Commander Data stood waiting. He looked at human Data, expression neutral, eyes steady. Mr. Data, he said. Data's stomach tightened automatically. The android's voice remained calm. I have reviewed the hearing determination, he said. I will comply with Starfleet directives. However, I will also note for record that your autonomy is to be respected. Data stared at him. The words sounded like a statement of principle rather than comfort, and yet, coming from that mouth, they mattered. Thank you, Data said quietly. The android paused. Your file was accessed without your consent, he said. That is a violation. I will pursue identification of the actor responsible. Data blinked. Why? He asked before he could stop himself. The android held still. Because consent matters, he said simply, and because a person's private narrative should not be used as leverage. Data's throat tightened. He could not tell whether he trusted the android yet. But he could tell that something had shifted. He nodded once. Understood, he said. Lieutenant Commander Data inclined his head. Safe transit, he said. Data realized, with a strange twist in his chest, that the android's farewell hurt less than Starfleet's. Cool, and had. They scheduled the departure through the main shuttle bay to avoid transporters. No more shimmer, Crusher had said sharply. Not for him. Hale agreed. Worf agreed. Everyone agreed because the alternative felt like inviting the universe to take another bite. The escort assembled at the turbolift. Worf, 2 security officers, Hale herself, and Data. Hale stood a half step ahead of Data, posture crisp, eyes scanning. She looked like a person trying to be an unbreakable wall. "Stay close," Hale said quietly to Data. "If anything happens, do not run. Follow me." Data's mouth tightened. "I am slow," he said. "Running is not my best option." Hale's gaze flicked to him. For a moment, something like sympathy lived there. Then it vanished under training. "That's why you stay close," she said. The turbolift doors opened. They stepped inside. The lift moved downward. Data felt the faint pressure shift in his ears. His heartbeat thumped steady and fast. He held Geordi's case against his chest as if it could protect him. When the doors opened on Deck 4, the corridor outside was empty. Too empty. Worf's posture tightened immediately. "I do not like this," he said. Hale's voice was low. "Move," she said. They stepped out. The corridor lights flickered. It was subtle, one brief dimming, then normal, a ripple that could have been routine power adjustment. Data's stomach turned. He felt nausea rise like a warning flare. Hale's head snapped toward the nearest panel. "Report," she snapped into her comm badge. No response. The comm line was dead. Worf drew his phaser. The air changed. Data could not explain it in sensor terms. It was a sensation in his skin, a pressure in his bones, like stepping into a thunderstorm just before the strike. The corridor ahead shimmered. Data's breath caught. "Transporter field," Hale barked. "Shields." Too late. Blue-white light flared around Data. The world pulled apart. It was not the clean, painless dissolution of a standard transport. It was a wrenching sensation that seemed to grab his organs and drag them through space. His body tried to scream and produced only a strangled gasp. He saw Worf surge forward, phaser raised. He saw Hale's hand shoot out toward him. Then the beam took him. For a fraction of a second, he existed as pattern again. And in that fraction, the anomaly brushed him like a cold finger. His mind flashed with a corridor of blank doors. Then he rematerialized on metal flooring that was not the Enterprise's. His knees buckled. He fell hard, pain exploding through his shoulder and hip. His lungs convulsed. He coughed, tasting blood. The room was dim, lit by narrow strips of cold light. The air smelled different, sharper, metallic, with an undertone of something bitter, Romulan. Data tried to push himself up. Hands grabbed him. He was dragged to a chair and strapped down with restraints that bit into his wrists. He struggled instinctively, and the movement made his shoulders scream. Panic surged, raw and animal. He forced himself to breathe. Across the room, a Romulan technician adjusted a console without looking at him. Another stood near the door with a disruptor rifle, posture rigid, eyes unreadable. Data swallowed hard. "Where am I?" he asked, voice rough. The technician did not answer. The room's view screen flickered on. A face appeared, sharp features, controlled expression, eyes like cold glass. "Romulan?" "Mr. Data," the figure said calmly. "I am Sub-Commander Vryn." Data's stomach dropped. The name had been whispered like a warning. "You kidnapped me," Data said. Vryn's mouth curved faintly. "We acquired you," he corrected. "Words matter." Data felt anger flare. "Consent matters," he said, and the phrase tasted like defiance. Vryn regarded him with mild amusement. "Consent is a Federation fetish," he said. "Useful, charming, not universal." Data's hands strained against the restraints. His heartbeat hammered. He forced his voice steady. "Why?" he asked. "Why take me?" Vryn's gaze was steady. "Because you are an instability," he said. "A question the Federation cannot answer. A proof that identity is malleable." Data swallowed. "I am a person," he said. Vryn nodded as if acknowledging a minor detail. "Yes," he said, "and you are also leverage." The technician in the room lifted a device, something like a medical scanner, something like a weapon, and moved toward Data. Data's breath caught. "No," he said. Vryn's voice remained calm. "We are going to map you," he said. "We have obtained a partial snapshot. We will complete it." Data's stomach clenched. The shard, his brain, traded like contraband. Vryn continued, voice almost conversational. "You will be relieved to know," he said, "that we have also acquired your private file." Data went cold. His throat tightened until he could barely breathe. "You read it," he whispered. Vryn's eyes gleamed faintly. "The part about the ordinary heartbeat," he said, "the ordinary miracle." Data's eyes stung. He blinked rapidly, and tears spilled down his cheeks without permission. He hated them. He hated that the Romulan could see them. Vryn watched with quiet satisfaction. "You wrote beautifully," he said. "It will be useful." Data's voice shook. "Useful for what?" he demanded. Vryn smiled faintly. "For persuading the reconstructed one," he said. "He will respond to the logic of continuity. He will respond to your reverence. He will be tempted to believe that saving you requires replacing you." Data's stomach turned. He pictured Lieutenant Commander Data reading his letter as instruction. He pictured Starfleet using his own words as justification. He tried to pull against the restraints again. Pain flared. He gasped. The Romulan technician approached, device humming. Data forced himself to stop struggling. He stared at the technician instead, young, eyes flicking nervously, jaw tight. Not a zealot, a worker. Data swallowed, throat raw. He spoke to the technician, not to Vryn. "Are you afraid?" he asked quietly. The technician's hand hesitated. The guard by the door shifted, eyes narrowing. Vryn's voice was amused. "He does that," he said. "He names fear like it's a tool." Data kept his gaze on the technician. "You are following orders," he said softly. So was Commander Sato. The technician's eyes flicked up briefly, startled by the name. Data pressed on, voice shaking but clear. "I am afraid," he said. "I do not want to be taken apart. I do not want to be copied and filed away. I do not want my life to become someone else's argument." The technician's breathing quickened. His grip on the device tightened. Data whispered, "If you do this, you will live with it." The technician's eyes flickered with something that might have been doubt. Vryn's smile vanished. "Proceed," he said sharply. The device hummed louder. Data closed his eyes and tried not to disappear inside terror. HOL. On the Enterprise, the moment Data vanished, alarms erupted. Hale's voice snapped through the corridor, harsh with fury. "Transporter trace," she barked. "Now." Worf fired his phaser at empty air out of instinct and rage. The beam struck the bulkhead and scorched a black line. One of the security officers stumbled, clutching his chest. A disruptor bolt fired from nowhere had grazed him. The smell of burned fabric filled the corridor. Hale swore, a rare crack in her composure. "They had a portable transporter," she hissed, "and they got through our dampening fields." Worf's eyes were murderous. "I will kill them," he growled. Hale's voice was iron. "You will help me bring him back alive," she snapped. The corridor filled with running footsteps. Picard arrived with Riker and Lieutenant Commander Data at his side. The android's face was calm, but his eyes were sharp, focused. "Report," Picard demanded. Hale's jaw was tight. "Mr. Data was extracted via unauthorized transporter lock," she said. "Portable system. Likely Tal Shiar. We lost comms in the moment of extraction." Picard's expression hardened. "Find him," he said. Geordi's voice crackled over comms, frantic. "Captain, I'm tracing the subspace signature. Damn it, there's interference. It's like they piggybacked on the anomaly." Picard's gaze snapped to Lieutenant Commander Data. "Can you track the pattern?" he asked. The android nodded immediately. "Yes," he said. "If the extraction left residual subspace distortion, I can extrapolate vector and range." Hale's eyes flicked to him, then to Picard. "We have minutes," she said. Picard's voice was low and lethal. "Then we do not waste them," he said. Huancel. Data's mind floated in and out of focus under the Romulan scanner. The device hummed. Cold pressure seemed to press against his skull, not painful in the traditional sense, but violating, like someone running fingers through his thoughts. He clenched his jaw until his teeth ached. In the haze, he heard a soft beep from the console behind the technician. The technician's posture tightened. He glanced toward the door, then back to Data. Data opened his eyes, blinking through tears. He met the technician's gaze and held it, forcing himself to be present. The technician swallowed hard. He leaned closer, voice barely audible. "Your people are coming," he whispered. Data's breath caught. "Why are you telling me?" he whispered back. The technician's eyes flicked toward the view screen where Vryn still watched, then away. "Because I do not want to be corrected," he whispered, the word tasting like fear. Data's chest tightened. In that moment, he understood the technician's meaning with visceral clarity, not corrected by a transporter, but by an institution that called violence necessity. The technician's hand moved, subtle and quick, and a lock on Data's restraints clicked, not open, but loosened. The guard by the door shifted, suspicious. "What are you doing?" he barked in Romulan. The technician snapped something back, sharp, authoritative. Data did not understand the words, but he understood the tone, control the narrative, but ES. The ship shuddered. A low-impact explosion trembled through the bulkheads. The Romulan guard's eyes widened. He raised his disruptor. The door burst open. Worf charged in first, roaring like a storm given flesh. Behind him came Starfleet security, and behind them, Lieutenant Commander Data. The android moved like a weapon refined into a man, stepping through disruptor fire as if it were rain. He struck the guard's arm with a precise blow, disarming him in a single motion. The guard crashed to the floor. Riker entered behind them, phaser raised, eyes scanning. "Data!" he shouted. Human Data's throat tightened. He tried to stand, but his legs shook. The restraints were still around his wrists. The Romulan technician stared at the intruders, frozen. Human Data looked at him and said softly, "Thank you." The technician flinched as if the words were heavier than any weapon. Lieutenant Commander Data crossed the room in 3 steps and snapped the restraints open with strength that made Human Data's stomach twist with envy and relief. Human Data stumbled forward. His shoulder screamed. Worf caught him before he fell, gripping his arm with a steadying force. "You are alive," Worf said, voice rough. Data's breath came out in a shaky laugh that turned into a cough. "Yes," he whispered, "for the moment." Riker's eyes hardened. "We're leaving," he snapped. Alarms wailed in the Romulan ship's corridor beyond. The sound was different from Starfleet alarms, sharper, more urgent like anger. Lieutenant Commander Data glanced toward the corridor, head tilted as if listening to frequencies no one else could hear. "We have 37 seconds before internal security arrives," he said. Riker didn't argue. "Move," he ordered. They ran. Human Data ran as best he could, limping, breath tearing out his lungs. Worf stayed beside him like a wall. The android moved ahead, clearing paths with terrifying efficiency. They reached the breach point where Starfleet had cut into the Romulan hull. A portable force field shimmered, holding back vacuum. Geordi's voice crackled over comms from the Enterprise. "You've got company," he warned. "They're trying to seal the breach from their side." Riker swore. "Worf, cover," he snapped. Worf raised his phaser and fired down the corridor, the beam lighting the dim hallway with violent flashes. Romulan figures appeared, dark uniforms, disruptors raised. Lieutenant Commander Data stepped into the open and fired with cold precision, each shot disabling, each movement economical. He did not hesitate. Human Data watched him and felt the strange ache of seeing his own face in battle again, strong, certain, lethal. They crossed the breach and snapped the field shut behind them. The shuttle detached from the Romulan hull with a jolt. Through the small viewport, Human Data saw the Romulan ship drift away into darkness, its cloaking field flickering like a dying thought. "Did we get Vryn?" Riker demanded. Lieutenant Commander Data's voice was calm. "No," he said. He withdrew. Human Data felt cold settle in his stomach. "He has my file," he whispered. Worf's grip tightened on his arm. "We will recover it," Worf said, but his tone held no certainty. Back aboard the Enterprise, Sickbay swallowed Data again. Crusher scanned him with hands that shook just enough to show she was angry at the universe and afraid of what it might take. "You're bruised," she snapped. "Your shoulder is strained, your vitals are elevated, and your markers." She stopped, eyes narrowing, anger sharpening. "Your markers are worse." Data closed his eyes. The words felt like a hammer. Picard stood at the foot of the biobed, posture rigid with controlled rage. "They abducted you from my ship," he said quietly. Data opened his eyes. "Yes," he whispered. Picard's gaze flicked to Hale, who stood near the door with her jaw clenched so hard the muscles jumped. "Commander Hale?" Picard said, voice cold. "Explain." Hale's voice was tight. "They had help," she said. "Somebody opened a gap in our dampening field timing. Somebody knew our route and our schedule." Picard's eyes narrowed. "An insider," he said. Hale nodded once, grim. "Yes," she said. "I will find them." Data's throat tightened. "They read my letter," he said suddenly. "But—" The room went still. Geordi's face went pale. Troy's eyes widened, wet. Crusher's jaw tightened into fury. Picard's voice softened, just slightly. "What letter?" he asked. Data swallowed hard. His chest hurt. His shoulder throbbed. His heart hammered like it was trying to outrun the memory. "A file I wrote," he whispered, "for the one I was." He looked at Lieutenant Commander Data, who stood near the far wall, posture still and attentive. The android's gaze met his, steady. Data's voice shook. "They will use it," he said. Lieutenant Commander Data spoke quietly. "Then we remove its power," he said. Data stared at him, breath catching. "How?" he asked. The android's voice was calm. By choosing what you reveal willingly, he said, so it cannot be stolen to shame you. Data felt Guinan's words echo in his mind, and the convergence made his stomach twist. He whispered, "They tore my skin." Crusher's voice was sharp. "Then we sew it back together," she said, fierce. Data closed his eyes. His heartbeat thumped stubbornly. He was alive. And somewhere in the dark, someone held his private words like a weapon. Chapter 9. The Anomaly Listens. Data woke with the word correct on his tongue. It wasn't a thought. It was a residue, like waking from a dream with a taste in the mouth that didn't belong to food. He lay in the dim light of sickbay recovery and listened to his body. His shoulder ached, his ribs felt tight, his heart beat steadily, stubbornly, refusing to be quieter just because he wanted control. Outside the room, the Enterprise hummed. He could feel the hum now, not as sensor data, not as a number on a console, but as vibration through bone. The ship systems pulsed around him like the circulation of a larger body, and he was aware, too aware of the moment-to-moment changes, power reroutes, minor fluctuations, the slight shift in tone when the ship adjusted course. He had always known the ship was alive in a metaphorical sense. Now he felt it as if it were literal. Crusher entered with a pad and an expression that tried to look like irritation and failed. "How do you feel?" she asked, and the question came out sharper than it needed to, as if she wanted to stab the universe through him. Data swallowed. "Sore," he said. Crusher huffed. "Good," she said. "Sore means you're still here." Data stared at his hands. There were faint marks on his wrists where the restraints had bitten. The sight made his stomach turn. Crusher's voice softened a fraction. "You're not leaving this ship today," she said. "Or tomorrow. I don't care what Starfleet wrote on a pad. They can file complaints. They can file paperwork. They don't get to file you." Data felt warmth bloom behind his eyes. He blinked quickly. "Thank you," he whispered. Crusher frowned at him as if gratitude were an inconvenience. "Don't thank me," she snapped. "Get well. And if you feel dizzy, you tell me. Not Hale. Not anyone who thinks fear is a security breach." Data nodded. When Crusher left, he sat up slowly and let his breathing settle. He could feel the slight tremor in his hands, the subtle exhaustion in his muscles, the way stress seemed to linger in his body like a bruise. He heard footsteps outside. The door slid open. Lieutenant Commander Data stepped in. The android's face was neutral, eyes steady. He stood at a respectful distance as if unsure of the correct interpersonal range. "Mr. Data," he said quietly. Data's chest tightened. The title still felt like a correction, but now it also felt like care expressed through formality. "Lieutenant Commander," Data replied. The android paused. "Commander Hale's investigation indicates the abduction was facilitated by an insider who manipulated dampening field timing," he said. "No identity has been confirmed yet." Data swallowed. "So the ship is compromised," he said. The android's gaze sharpened. "The ship is infiltrated," he corrected. "Compromise implies irreversible loss." Data almost smiled. The distinction was old him. Then the android said, softer, "Your file was accessed by hostile intelligence." Data's throat tightened. "Yes," he whispered. The android held still. "You expressed concern that the file would be used as leverage," he said. "I propose we remove that leverage." Data's stomach clenched. By revealing it, he said, "By choosing what is known," the android replied, "so that it cannot be weaponized by theft." Data stared at him. He could not tell whether this was compassion or strategy. Perhaps it did not matter. "Will you listen?" Data asked, voice low as a person. The android's eyes held his. "Yes," he said. Data took a breath. He could taste antiseptic in the air. He could feel his heartbeat. He could feel how naked the next words would make him. He spoke anyway. "I wrote the file for the one I was," he said, "for the Data who might exist if a restoration created continuity or if a copy claimed my name. I wrote that I did not know what he would be." The android did not move. Data's voice shook. "I wrote that I lived as a human," he continued, "that I lived with fear and limits, that I learned that being less capable did not make me less worthy." His throat tightened. "I wrote, if you face a choice between efficiency and continuity, remember me." Silence. The android's head tilted by a fraction. "And your final statement?" he asked. Data swallowed hard. "I wrote," he whispered, "I do not ask you to remain human, I ask you to remain kind." The words hung in the air between them like a fragile object. Neither wanted to drop. The android stood very still. For a moment, Data feared the response would be a clinical acknowledgement, a polite understood that would make the vulnerability feel wasted. Then the android said quietly, "Kindness is not an operational requirement." Data's stomach tightened. "No," he said. The android's gaze stayed on him. "Therefore," he said, "choosing it is non-trivial." Data felt something in his chest loosen. He nodded once, unable to speak. The android inclined his head. "Thank you for revealing it willingly," he said. Data whispered, "Now it cannot be stolen from me." The android's voice was calm. "Correct," he said. And the word correct landed differently this time. Less like threat, more like agreement. Relax. Later, in 10 Forward, Guinan poured him tea and did not ask permission. Data sat at the bar with his hands wrapped around the cup, letting warmth seep into his fingers. His body felt tired in a way that went deeper than bruises. It felt tired in his bones. Guinan watched him for a long moment. "You got taken," she said, blunt. Data's throat tightened. "Yes," he said. Guinan leaned closer. "And you came back," she said. Data stared at the tea. "Yes," he repeated, and his voice was smaller than he wanted. Guinan's gaze sharpened. "How does that feel?" she asked. Data closed his eyes briefly. Images flashed, blue-white shimmer, restraints biting his wrists, Vren's calm voice reading his words as if they were property. He opened his eyes. "Like my life is reachable," he said quietly. Guinan nodded once. "It is," she said. "That's the part of being human nobody advertises." Data swallowed. "He read my letter," he said. Guinan's hands paused mid-pour. "Did he?" she said softly. Data nodded. "He quoted it," he said, "as if it were a tool." Guinan's voice was quiet and sharp. "People will try to use anything you love," she said. "That's not your failure. That's their hunger." Data stared at her. "I told the other Data what I wrote," he said, "willingly." Guinan's mouth curved faintly. "Good," she said. "Now it belongs to you again." Data exhaled slowly. "It was difficult," he admitted. Guinan nodded. "Of course it was," she said. "Reverence isn't polite, it's fierce." Data felt the words settle into him. Guinan leaned in, eyes steady. "Now," she said, "tell me what you're going to do next." Data's throat tightened. "Starfleet wants me off this ship," he said. "The Tal Shiar wants me in pieces. The Anomaly wants—" He stopped. Guinan waited, patient as gravity. Data swallowed. "The Anomaly wants to resolve," he said quietly. "It wants to make things match." Guinan's gaze sharpened. "What do you mean?" she asked. Data stared out the window at the stars, at the vast indifference. "When it touched me," he said, "it did not destroy me. It corrected me according to assumptions. It made me match what the transporter thinks a person should be." Guinan's voice was low. "And now?" she asked. Data's stomach tightened. He remembered the duplicated hyperspanners, 2 identical histories, one reality splitting cleanly as if the universe were tired of messy answers. "Now it is close," Data said, "and it is listening." Guinan's eyebrows rose slightly. "Listening," she repeated. Data nodded. "Not like a person," he said, frustrated, "not with ears. But it responds to patterns, to identity assumptions. It corrects ambiguity." Guinan set the teapot down. "That sounds familiar," she said. Data frowned. "Starfleet," he said. Guinan's mouth curved, humorless. "Exactly," she said. Data's chest tightened. "How do you fight something that corrects you by definition?" he asked. Guinan's gaze held his. "Maybe you don't fight it," she said. "Maybe you give it something better than a correction." Data stared at her. Guinan leaned closer. "What are you willing to be?" she asked softly, "on purpose." The question hit him like a hand on the sternum. He thought of fear. He thought of consent. He thought of the 2 Datas walking side by side in a corridor while the crew looked away. He thought of the technician's whisper, "Your people are coming, .es." Data swallowed. "I am willing," he said slowly, "to choose myself out loud." Guinan nodded once, satisfied. "Good," she said. "Then you can't be corrected into silence." Ezoweddle. In engineering, the 3 of them worked in uneasy alignment. Geordi paced between consoles, dragging data streams across displays with quick, restless movements. Lieutenant Commander Data stood at a terminal running subspace models at a speed that made Geordi's jaw tighten with envy. Human Data sat on a stool, wearing Geordi's prototype sensory filter patch behind his ear, eyes closed intermittently as he tried to listen to what his body felt. He hated the patch and loved the relief it gave him. Okay, Geordi said, voice tight. We've got duplication events. We've got unauthorized pattern buffer access. We've got abduction transport that piggybacked on the anomaly. And we've got evidence the anomaly isn't gone. It's hanging around our transporter systems like a bad habit. Lieutenant Commander Data's fingers moved rapidly. The distortion exhibits consistent harmonics, he said. It appears to interact with transporter error correction routines. Human Data opened his eyes. It doesn't just interact, he said quietly. It prefers them. Geordi looked at him. Explain, he said. Human Data swallowed. Error correction assumes a template, he said. It assumes what is normal. It assumes what is the same. Lieutenant Commander Data's head tilted. A transporter must assume in order to function, he said. Without parameters, pattern resolution fails. Yes, Human Data said, and the anomaly feeds on assumptions. Geordi rubbed a hand over his face. So what do we do? He asked. Turn off transporters for the rest of our lives? Human Data's throat tightened. People will die, he said, thinking of away missions, of emergencies where transporters were the difference between rescue and loss. Lieutenant Commander Data spoke calmly. We can modify error correction routines to require explicit consent for pattern alterations beyond structural stabilization, he said. Geordi's eyes widened. Consent locks, he muttered. Human Data felt a cold rush. The anomaly will bypass it, he said. It bypassed everything. Lieutenant Commander Data's gaze sharpened. Then we must consider the anomaly as an active participant, he said. If it is listening to patterns, we can broadcast a pattern that satisfies it without rewriting people. Geordi stared at him. Decoy? He said. Human Data closed his eyes. Behind his eyelids, the corridor of blank doors stretched away. Not a decoy, he whispered. A choice. Geordi frowned. Data? What does that mean? He asked. Human Data opened his eyes. It corrected me because it thought it was helping, he said. Because it thought it was resolving an error. If we present it with a coherent pattern that includes consent, includes identity as chosen, maybe it won't reach for templates. Geordi stared. You want to teach a subspace distortion ethics, he said, half disbelief. Human Data's mouth tightened. I want to teach it something else to do, he said, because it will do something. It will not stop. Lieutenant Commander Data nodded once. A voluntary continuity signature, he said quietly, as if naming it made it real. Geordi exhaled slowly. Okay, he said. Okay, that's insane. Which means it might be the only idea we've got. Before any of them could speak further, the ship's comm system chimed. Captain Picard to engineering, the computer announced. Priority message. Data's stomach tightened. He felt, suddenly, the ship's vibration shift, subtle but unmistakable, a course adjustment, a turn. Picard's voice came over the comm moments later, controlled and urgent. Mr. LaForge, he said, we have received a distress call. Geordi's hands froze over the console. From where? He asked. Picard's voice was tight. A civilian courier, Laundry 7's sister ship, he said. They report transporter drift. Crew members are returning altered. Memory discontinuities. Panic. Human Data felt cold spread through his chest. Altered. Corrected. Picard continued. Starfleet has advised us to wait for a containment team. I am not waiting while people are rewritten. I want your best recommendation on transporter protocols within the hour. Geordi swallowed. Aye, Captain, he said. Picard's voice softened slightly. And, Mr. Data, he added quietly, I will need you. Human Data's breath caught. He looked at Lieutenant Commander Data. The android's gaze met his, steady. Outside engineering, the stars slid past. Inside Human Data's body, his heartbeat thumped, stubborn and loud. He could feel the ship turning toward danger. And, in the deep layers of sensation beneath fear, he felt something else, like pressure building ahead of them, like a hand in subspace reaching. The anomaly was listening. Side Chapter 10, Orders. The stars on the main view screen slid past a fraction faster than they should have. It was a subtle thing, an extra sharpness to the streaks, a faint change in the ship's vibration beneath the deck. The Enterprise had turned toward the distress call with the quiet urgency of a creature moving toward a sound it couldn't ignore. Captain Picard stood at the center of the bridge with his hands clasped behind his back, posture controlled, expression carved into calm. Commander Hale stood near the aft stations, eyes on the tactical and communications displays. She looked like a person bracing for impact. Lieutenant Commander Data sat at ops, hands moving with practiced precision. The sight should have felt familiar. Instead, it felt like watching a mask return to a face while the man behind it still existed somewhere in the ship. Time to intercept? Picard asked. 7 minutes at current warp, Lieutenant Commander Data replied. Picard nodded once. Keep transporters offline until we assess, he said. Understood, the android said. The comm console chimed. Ensign Rowe looked up. Incoming priority transmission, she said. Starfleet command encryption. Picard's jaw tightened by a fraction. On screen, he said. Admiral Nakamura's face resolved on the view screen, expression sharp with controlled impatience. His eyes flicked across the bridge, taking in Picard, the crew, the ops station. Captain, Nakamura said without greeting, we have received your course update. Countermand it, hold position, and await the containment team. Picard's voice was even. Admiral, we have a distress call, he said. Crew members are being altered. We are the closest ship. Nakamura's gaze hardened. You are also the ship whose transporter systems are currently contaminated by an active anomaly, he snapped. Approaching another vessel in distress risks spreading the distortion. You will stand down. Picard's eyes narrowed. People are being rewritten now, he said quietly. Waiting is not neutrality. It is a choice. Nakamura's mouth tightened. Captain, this is an order, he said. Picard's voice went colder. Admiral, he said, if the Federation must allow people to be erased in order to avoid risk, then what exactly are we protecting? Silence. Nakamura's expression shifted, not softened, but recalibrated into a harder kind of control. You are not authorized to make this decision, he said. I am. Picard's gaze held his. Then make it with the knowledge that lives are on the line, he said. Nakamura's jaw worked. Very well, he said. If you insist on proceeding, Starfleet will impose additional constraints. Hale's posture tightened. Nakamura continued, voice clipped. Lieutenant Commander Data is to report for immediate recall and transfer to the USS Bellerophon. He is to be removed from your vessel for security evaluation and to prevent further identity contamination. The bridge went still. Lieutenant Commander Data's hands paused over his console for a fraction of a second. Picard's eyes narrowed. You are using him as leverage, he said quietly. Nakamura's expression was cold. I am removing a strategic risk, he said. You will comply. Picard's voice tightened. And Mr. Data? He asked. Nakamura's eyes flicked. Mr. Data's relocation stands, he said. If he remains aboard, he will be placed under Starfleet custody at the earliest opportunity. Picard's hands tightened behind his back until his knuckles whitened. Admiral, he said, voice low, I will not facilitate the kidnapping of a civilian under my protection. Nakamura's mouth hardened. Then you will be relieved, he snapped. If you are incapable of prioritizing security, Starfleet will place someone in command who can. The threat hung in the air, heavy and familiar. Picard did not flinch. If you relieve me for saving lives, he said quietly, then you will have turned Starfleet into a machine that corrects inconvenient people. Nakamura's eyes flashed. This conversation is concluded, he said. You have your orders. The transmission cut. For a moment, no one moved. Then Hale stepped forward, voice carefully even. Captain, she said, Starfleet's orders are clear. Picard turned his head slightly. So is the distress call, he replied. Hale's jaw tightened. If you proceed, Starfleet may interpret it as insubordination, she said. Picard's voice was quiet and sharp. And if we do not proceed, he said, we interpret ourselves as the kind of people who leave others to be rewritten because bureaucracy is afraid. Hale held his gaze. The conflict in her eyes was small but real. Captain, Riker said, stepping closer, we need a decision. Picard nodded once. We continue, he said. Hale's posture stiffened. Then I am obligated to enact security constraints, she said. Picard's gaze turned cold. Commander Hale, he said, you are obligated to protect lives aboard this ship. Do not confuse obedience with morality. Hale's mouth tightened. Do not confuse morality with safety, she shot back. Well, Picard's voice did not rise. Safety without consent is violence, he said. Hale went still. Lieutenant Commander Data stood. The movement drew every eye. He turned toward Picard. Captain, he said calmly, Starfleet has issued a recall. I will not comply at this time. Hale's eyes widened. Lieutenant Commander, she began. The android continued, gaze steady. I will not allow my commission to be used as leverage against Mr. Data's autonomy, he said. If Starfleet requires my recall, I will require, in exchange, written guarantees of Mr. Data's safety and freedom from custodial coercion. Riker stared. Troy's breath caught softly. Picard looked at the android with a flicker of fierce respect. Noted, Picard said. Hale's voice tightened. You are under Starfleet orders, she said. You are commissioned. The android's gaze did not waver. I am also a person, he replied. Consent matters. The words, simple, firm, shifted the gravity of the room. Picard turned slightly toward Troy. "Counselor," he said quietly, "find Mr. Data. Tell him what's happening." Troy nodded and moved quickly toward the turbolift. The bridge resumed its work, but the tension did not dissipate. It sank into the ship like cold water. In the corridor outside the turbolift, Troy found human Data standing with one hand pressed to the wall, eyes closed, breathing slowly. He opened his eyes as she approached. "Counselor," he said. Troy's voice was soft. "Starfleet has issued new orders," she said. "They want Picard to stand down. They want the ship to wait." Data's mouth tightened. "And the distress call?" he asked. Troy's eyes held his. "Picard is going anyway," she said. Data's chest tightened, relief and fear braided together. "Thank you," he whispered, and he meant it for Picard, for the ship, for the stubborn ideals that kept someone from being alone. Troy swallowed. "They also issued a recall for Lieutenant Commander Data," she said. "They want him transferred off ship." Data went still. "Why?" he asked. Troy's voice was low. "Because they think 2 datas is contamination," she said. "Because they want the narrative clean." Data's stomach turned. "And what does he intend?" he asked. Troy's eyes softened. "He refused," she said. "He said he won't comply unless your safety and autonomy are guaranteed." Data stared at her, breath-catching. The idea of the android refusing Starfleet for his sake felt unreal. "He asked me," Troy said quietly, "to ask you something." Data's throat tightened. "What?" he whispered. Troy took a breath. "What do you want him to do?" she asked. Data's mind crowded. Part of him wanted to say, "Obey, keep your commission, don't make more trouble because of me.he. Another part wanted to say, "Stay, don't let them separate you so they can erase me in quiet." He could feel fear pressing on him like a weight. He swallowed hard. "I do not want him to sacrifice himself for me," he said, "and I do not want to be used as a reason to remove him." Troy nodded. "So what do you want?" she asked, gently insistent. Data's breath trembled. "I want him," he said slowly, "to choose what he believes is right, not what is convenient." Troy's eyes went wet. "I'll tell him," she whispered. "Whose?" On the bridge, the comm console chimed again. "Incoming message," Rose said. "USS Bellerophon. They've altered course. They're intercepting." Hale's jaw tightened. "Escort," she muttered. Picard's gaze stayed on the stars ahead. "Let them pursue," he said calmly. "We are not running. We are going to save lives." Riker's voice was low. "Captain," he said, "if they drop out of warp ahead of us." Picard's eyes narrowed. "Then they will have to decide whether to stop or rescue," he said, in public. Lieutenant Commander Data's voice was quiet. "Distress vessel within range," he reported. "Receiving additional transmissions. The situation is deteriorating." Picard's jaw tightened. "All hands," he said. "Prepare for emergency response. Mr. LaForge, coordinate transporter lock suppression. Dr. Crusher, prepare triage. Counselor Troy, coordinate psychological stabilization protocols." The crew moved. The Enterprise surged forward. Behind them, somewhere in the dark, Starfleet's escort ship adjusted course like a shadow choosing to follow. Chapter 11, Continuity Field. The courier ship drifted like a wounded animal. Its running lights flickered. Its hull bore shallow scars, subspace shear marks that looked like someone had dragged claws along metal. The ship's registry glowed faintly. Lantry. I-9. Picard stood on the bridge, eyes narrowed, reading the ship's posture the way a sailor reads a storm. "Hail them," he ordered. Static crackled. Then a face appeared on the view screen. Human, middle-aged, sweat on her brow, eyes wide with fear. "This is Captain Marrow of the Lantry 8, she said quickly. "Thank the Starfleet, thank you. Our transporter systems are—" She swallowed hard. "They're rewriting people." The bluntness hit the bridge like a shockwave. Picard's voice was calm. "Captain Marrow," he said, "I need you to do 2 things. First, disable your transporters. Do not use them again unless we instruct you." Marrow's eyes darted. "We tried," she said. "We shut them down and they came back online. People panicked. Her voice broke. "They started transporting anyway." Picard's jaw tightened. "Second," he said, voice firmer, "gather your crew in one secure location. We are sending an away team." Marrow nodded rapidly. "Aye," she said, and her eyes flicked towards someone off-screen as if begging them to hold the world together. The keen cut. Riker was already standing. "Away team," he said. "Worf, Troy, Crusher." "Mr. Data," Picard added, and the words made human Data's chest tighten. Human Data stood near the rear of the bridge wearing Geordie's sensory filter patch and feeling the ship's hum like a second skin. His shoulder ached from the abduction. His fatigue sat heavy in his limbs. He still nodded. You are medically restricted, Crusher snapped immediately. Human Data met her gaze. People are being altered, he said quietly. I may be able to help them remain themselves. Crusher's eyes flashed with anger, then softened with fear. If you so much as feel dizzy, she said, you tell me, immediately. Human Data nodded. Yes, he said. Lieutenant Commander Data spoke from Ops. Captain, he said, I recommend I remain aboard to coordinate transporter containment. The anomaly is interacting with transporter assumptions. Centralized control is more efficient. Picard nodded once. Agreed, he said. Lieutenant Commander, coordinate with Mr. LaForge. I want no unsupervised transporter cycles aboard either vessel. The android's voice was steady. Understood, he said. Human Data glanced toward him and felt the odd ache of a partnership formed under pressure. They transported to the Launchry 8, using minimal pattern buffering, manual supervision, and Geordie's voice in their ears over comm. The shimmer took Human Data apart with a sensation that still felt like violation. He held his breath through it. When he rematerialized, he staggered. Hot air hit his lungs. The corridor aboard the Launchry 8 smelled of sweat, overheated circuitry, and fear. Alarm lights pulsed along the walls. Voices echoed, shouting, crying, arguments breaking into sobs. Worf took point, phaser drawn. Troy moved beside Human Data, her presence steady. Crusher scanned as she walked, eyes sharp. Riker stepped forward, voice carrying command. Starfleet, he called. We're here to help. Everyone to the central cargo bay now. A crewman ran past them, eyes wild. He slammed into the bulkhead and stared at Riker as if seeing a stranger. Who are you? The man demanded. Riker's brow furrowed. Commander Riker, he said. Enterprise. The man's face twisted with panic. No, he said. No, you're... He swallowed hard. You're not the one who was here a minute ago. Troy's eyes softened with immediate understanding. He's disoriented, she murmured. Human Data felt his stomach twist. He knew that disorientation intimately, how it felt to be an afterimage of oneself. They reached the cargo bay. It was packed. Crew members stood in clusters, gripping each other, pressing against the walls. Some looked angry, some terrified, some numb. A woman held a child against her chest, rocking and whispering, and the child's voice, thin and wrong, asked in a trembling tone, Mom, why does my throat feel different? The mother's face was streaked with tears. I don't know, she whispered. I don't know. Captain Marrow stood at the center with her shoulders squared like someone holding a failing dam. Her eyes flicked to the away team and then to Human Data. She froze. She started, then stopped as if afraid to name it. Human Data stepped forward, his heart hammered. The crowd's fear pressed on his skin like heat. I am Data, he said, voice rough but clear. I have experienced transporter alteration. I am here to help you. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. One man laughed, a short, sharp sound that had no humor. Help, he said. My husband doesn't recognize me. My hands aren't my hands. Another woman shouted, My brother transported and came back wrong, like he forgot me. The word wrong hit Human Data like a fist. He took a breath. He felt the patch behind his ear dampen the roar of sensory noise just enough for him to focus. He looked at Captain Marrow. How many transports occurred after shutdown? He asked. Marrow swallowed. Too many, she said. We couldn't stop them. People thought they could fix it. They thought if they transported again, they'd come back right. Human Data's chest tightened. Transporters are not mirrors, he said softly. They do not restore. They assemble. The crowd shifted, a ripple of panic. Riker stepped forward. Listen, he said, voice firm. We are going to stabilize your systems, but we need you to help us by staying calm and not using the transporters. A crewman shouted, Khan, my voice isn't mine. Human Data turned toward the man. He could see the terror in the man's eyes, the way his hands shook, the way his body looked like it wanted to run and had nowhere to go. Human Data swallowed hard. He did the thing that had saved a colony. He told the truth. I am afraid, he said. The words cut through the noise like a blade. Heads turned. Human Data continued, voice shaking but steady. I have been altered, he said. I have been abducted. I have been told I am a security risk and an inconvenience. I have felt my own identity become negotiable. He looked around the crowded bay. You are afraid, he said, because you don't know whether the next transport will erase you. You don't know whether your memories will hold. You don't know whether your family will recognize you. He felt his throat tighten. He forced the words out anyway. Fear does not have to become chaos, he said. It can become focus. Help us by holding still. Help us by not feeding the machine that is hurting you. The room was silent for a moment. Then a woman near the wall let out a sob and nodded. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Captain Marrow's shoulders sagged by a fraction, as if someone had offered her a handhold. Troy moved among the crew, voice low, grounding people, guiding breaths. Crusher took the sickest to the side, scanning and stabilizing. Worf and Riker coordinated security and engineering access. Human Data stayed near the center, not because he could fix the ship, but because he could hold the fear long enough for others to act. On comm, Geordi's voice came through to Riker urgent. I'm trying to suppress their transporter auto-activation, he said, but it's like the system keeps trying to correct itself. Lieutenant Commander Data's voice followed, calm and precise. Marrow's transporter pattern buffer is exhibiting the same correction harmonics, he said. The anomaly is interacting with their system. We must create a counter pattern that satisfies the correction routine without rewriting the subject. Human Data's stomach tightened. He could feel, faintly, the pressure in the air, a sense of subspace bending, like the ship was sitting in a current no one could see. He pressed his hand against the bulkhead and felt the vibration shift. It's getting closer, he whispered. Troy heard him and turned, eyes wide. What? She asked softly. Human Data swallowed. The anomaly, he said. I can feel it. Troy's voice was gentle and strained. Then keep breathing, she said. Stay with us. Human Data nodded, focusing on the simplest thing, air in, air out. Heartbeat. Present. The ship lurched. Lights flickered. A scream echoed down the corridor outside the cargo bay. Riker tapped his badge. Report, he snapped. Geordi's voice crackled, tense. Captain, the Enterprise's transporter systems just spooled up without command, he said. We're getting an autocycle. Picard's voice cut in, controlled and urgent. Lieutenant Commander Data is attempting to override, he said, but the system is resisting. Human Data felt cold wash through his chest. The anomaly had turned its attention to them. Worf's eyes narrowed. We are being targeted, he growled. Human Data looked at Captain Marrow, at the terrified crew, at the child with the wrong voice. He thought of Guinan's question, what are you willing to be on purpose? He swallowed hard. We will not be corrected, he whispered. Outside Belantry 8's viewport, a ship dropped out of warp. Its hull gleamed with Starfleet polish and authority. USS Bellerophon. The escort had arrived to witness and to stop whatever happened next. Chapter 12, The Non-Destructive Choice. The transporter pad on the Enterprise began to hum like an animal waking. Geordi stood in Transporter Room 1 with sweat on his temples and a hand hovering over the primary cutoff. The room smelled faintly of ozone. The console's lights flickered as if the system were trying to decide which authority mattered more, the captain's orders or the anomaly's hunger. Lieutenant Commander Data stood at the console beside him, fingers moving with controlled speed. The cycle is attempting to initiate, the android said. No operator input. Pattern buffers are engaging under correction subroutine. I know, Geordi muttered. I can hear it. Picard's voice came over comm from the bridge, clipped with urgency. Status, he demanded. Geordi swallowed. Transporters are spooling up on their own, he said. We're holding them in manual, for now. For now felt like a prayer. On the bridge, Picard stared at the Bellerophon silhouette on the view screen. The escort ship held position off the Enterprise's starboard bow like a judge waiting for someone to make a mistake. They're hailing, Ro reported, voice tight. Picard's jaw clenched. On screen, he said. The Bellerophon's captain appeared, stern, older, eyes sharp with institutional confidence. Captain Picard, the man said. This is Captain Thorne of the USS Bellerophon. You are ordered to stand down and cease all transporter operations. The anomaly is a contamination risk. Picard's voice was cold. Captain Thorne, he said, we are in the middle of a rescue. People are being rewritten on Belantry 8. If you interfere, you will be responsible for their deaths. Thorne's expression did not soften. Your presence is escalating the anomaly, he said. Withdraw, now. Picard leaned forward slightly. If you want to stop a rescue, he said quietly, do it on record. Do it while people scream on the other end of the comm channel. Thorne's jaw tightened. This is not a debate, he snapped. This is Starfleet Command. Picard's eyes narrowed. Then Starfleet Command is wrong, he said. The transmission cut. On the Belantry 8, in the cargo bay full of terrified crew, Human Data felt the ship shudder again, felt it in the deck beneath his boots, in the air pressure against his skin, in the nausea that rose like a warning flare. Twa's hand brushed his arm lightly. Data, she whispered, stay with me. Data swallowed hard and forced his breathing to slow. The sensory filter patch helped, but fear still pressed on him from every angle. The panic in the room, the instability in the ship, the knowledge that transporters were trying to seize control like a reflex. Riker tapped his comm badge. "Enterprise," he said. "We're losing stability here. People are starting to panic again." Picard's voice came through, controlled and urgent. "Understood," he said. "Lieutenant Commander Data and Mr. LaForge are developing a counter-pattern. Mr. Data," Picard paused, and the pause made Data's heart pound. "I need you back aboard the Enterprise." Data went cold. Troy's eyes widened. "Jean-Luc," she began. Picard's voice stayed steady. "We need his voluntary continuity signature," he said. "The anomaly is listening to embodied patterns. He is the only one who can anchor it without coercion." Data's stomach clenched. The transporter, the shimmer, the correction. His hands trembled. Crusher stepped close, eyes blazing. "Absolutely not," she snapped into her comm badge. "He's medically unstable. Transporting him again could—" Picard's voice softened only slightly. "Doctor," he said, "I would not ask if there were another way." Silence stretched. Data could hear his heartbeat over the room's noise, loud as a drum. He looked at the terrified crew around him, the child with the wrong voice, the woman gripping her partner's hands as if touch could glue reality in place. He saw himself in their eyes, the desperate need to remain coherent. He remembered Guinan's question. "What are you willing to be on purpose?" Data took a breath. "I will return," he said. Crusher's head snapped toward him. "Data." Data met her gaze, voice shaking but firm. "I am afraid," he said, "and I am choosing." Troy's eyes went wet. "I'll go with you," she whispered. Worf's posture tightened. "I will go," he said. Riker shook his head once, sharp. "We can't move the whole team," he said. "We need to keep these people steady." Troy swallowed and nodded reluctantly. She turned to the crowd. "Everyone listen," she said, voice carrying. "Starfleet is stabilizing your systems. You need to hold still. Do not transport. Breathe. Stay here." Data looked at Captain Marrow. "You told them the truth," he said quietly. "Keep doing that." Marrow's throat worked. She nodded once, fierce. "I will," she said. The transport back to the Enterprise felt like stepping voluntarily into a storm. Geordi's voice came through tight. "Mr. Data, I'm locking in a minimal buffer cycle, manual supervision, no correction routines. You hear me?" Data swallowed hard. "I hear you," he whispered. "And Data," Geordi added, and the way he said the name, no, Mr., no rank, made Data's chest tighten. "If you want to abort, you say it. I don't care what anyone else says." Data nodded even though Geordi couldn't see it. He stepped onto the transporter pad. He felt the hum rise under his feet. His stomach turned. He closed his eyes and breathed. The beam took him. For a fraction of a second, he felt the edge of the anomaly brush his pattern, cold, curious, hungry. Then he rematerialized on the Enterprise's transporter pad and nearly collapsed. Crusher was there, hands on him immediately, steadying his shoulders. "Easy," she snapped, voice too loud to hide fear. "Breathe." Data gasped and forced air in. His lungs burned, his heart hammered. Geordi stood at the console, face pale, eyes wide behind his visor. Lieutenant Commander Data stood beside him, posture still, hands already moving. Picard entered the transporter room at a quick pace, expression controlled. Hale followed him, jaw tight. "We have minutes," Hale said. Picard did not look at her. "Mr. Data," he said, voice soft, "I will not order you to do this." Data's throat tightened. "I know," he whispered. Picard nodded once. "Then tell me what you want," he said. Data's chest hurt. He could feel his heartbeat. He could feel the tremor in his hands. He looked at the transporter pad, at the place that had once rewritten him. He whispered, "I want to stop them from being corrected into someone else." Picard's eyes softened. "Then we proceed," he said. Geordi's voice was tight. "Okay," he said, "here's the plan. We're going to broadcast a pattern, not transport you. Broadcast. A continuity signature encoded with explicit consent parameters. The anomaly's harmonics are interacting with correction routines. We're giving it a new correction target, chosen identity." Data swallowed. "And if it tries to correct me?" he asked. Geordi held up a small device. Physical, ugly, reassuring. "Hard abort," he said, "in your hand. You squeeze and everything stops. No override." Hale's eyes narrowed. "That's a security risk," she said automatically. Picard's voice was ice. "Then accept the risk," he said. "Consent is not optional." Lieutenant Commander Data spoke quietly. "The broadcast must include both constraint and coherence," he said. "If the pattern is ambiguous, the anomaly will resolve it." Data felt nausea rise. Ambiguity, the universe's favorite excuse for violence. Geordi nodded, fingers flying. That's why we're using you, he said, and his voice softened. Because you're coherent, you're alive, you choose. Crusher's hands tightened on Data's shoulders. Your vitals are already elevated, she said, voice sharp. If this spikes your stress response? Data looked at her. I know, he said quietly. Crusher swallowed hard. If you feel like you're fading, she whispered, you abort. You do not prove anything to anyone. Data nodded once. Lieutenant Commander Data stepped closer. His gaze met Data's. Mr. Data, he said quietly, I will maintain buffer stability. Geordi will control output. Your role is to hold coherence. Data almost laughed through fear. Hold coherence, he whispered, as if it is a physical object. The android's voice was calm. In this case, he said, it may be. Geordi's fingers stopped. Okay, he said, ready. Data stepped onto the transporter pad. The hum rose. His stomach lurched. He held the abort device tightly in his hand, feeling the plastic bite into his palm. He forced himself to breathe. He looked up at Picard. The captain's eyes held his with fierce respect. Data looked at Geordi, whose face was pale with fear he couldn't hide. He looked at Crusher, whose hands were steady on his shoulders like an anchor. He looked at Lieutenant Commander Data, the face that was his face, the stillness that was his past. And he felt, beneath all the fear, a strange, stubborn reverence. For this life. He nodded once. Geordi activated the sequence. The transporter beam flared, not in the clean outward direction of transport, but in a contained, shimmering lattice that wrapped around Data like a net of light. The room vibrated, the air thickened, Data's skin prickled. He felt pressure in his skull, a sense of subspace folding inward as if something enormous had leaned closer to listen. His heartbeat hammered, his vision blurred at the edges. Crusher's voice was sharp in his ear. Data, stay with me, she said. Data swallowed, mouth dry, and forced his focus onto the simplest thing. Breath. Then another thing. Choice. He spoke aloud, not because the computer needed it, but because he did. This is me, he whispered, on purpose. The pressure intensified. For a moment, he saw the corridor of blank doors in his mind, bright and endless. One door waited, unlabeled, glowing with white light. He felt the pull toward it like gravity. He clenched the abort device so hard his hand hurt. He stayed. I choose, he whispered. The transporter hum spiked to a near scream. Lieutenant Commander Data's hands moved faster, correcting output, keeping the pattern coherent. Geordi's voice came in a strained whisper, half prayer, half command. Hold, hold. Data's chest tightened. His heartbeat stumbled, just once. Crusher's hand tightened and fear flashed in her eyes. Data. Data gasped and forced air in, his lungs burned, his mind crowded with white light. Then the pressure eased. Not vanished, not gone. Eased like a fist unclenching. The transporter hum lowered from a scream to a steady, controlled thrum. The shimmering lattice around Data softened and then collapsed inward, dissolving harmlessly. The room went still. Data swayed on the pad, knees weak. Crusher caught him. Geordi stared at his console as if it were a miracle and an insult at once. It worked, he whispered. Lieutenant Commander Data's voice was calm, but there was something tight in it. The anomaly's harmonics have shifted, he reported. Correction routines on both vessels have disengaged. Picard exhaled slowly, the first visible release of tension in minutes. Launchery 8, he said. Report. Riker's voice came through comm from the courier ship, breathless with relief. Captain, he said, the transporter just went quiet. People are stabilizing, no more drift. Troy says panic is easing. Data closed his eyes. His heart hammered. He was alive. He had stayed. The comm console chimed again. Rose's voice came through from the bridge tight. Captain, the Bellerophon is hailing again. Picard's jaw tightened as he tapped his comm badge. Picard, he said. Captain Thorne's voice came through, less commanding than before. Captain Picard, Thorne said, we observed a subspace harmonic shift consistent with anomaly containment. Explain what you did. Picard looked at Data, then at Geordi and Lieutenant Commander Data. His voice was quiet and steady. We chose consent, he said. There was a long pause on the line. Then Thorne said, carefully, Starfleet will require a full report. Picard's voice was calm. They will receive it, he said, along with the knowledge that coercion was never the solution. The transmission ended. Data felt Crusher's hands on him, steadying. He opened his eyes and looked at the others in the room. For a moment, no one spoke. Then, Geordi let out a shaky laugh that sounded like a man discovering he had not been holding his breath for nothing. "You did it," Geordi whispered. Data's voice was hoarse. "We did it," he corrected gently. Lieutenant Commander Data's gaze remained on him. "Your pattern remained coherent under extreme subspace pressure," he said. "That is notable." Data swallowed. "I was afraid," he whispered. The android nodded once. "And you acted anyway," he said. Data felt something in his chest tighten. Not pain this time, but something dangerously like gratitude. Outside, beyond steel and policy and subspace mathematics, the stars slid past. Inside, the ordinary heartbeat continued. Chapter 13, Reverence to Lives. They didn't call it a victory. Starfleet did not like that word unless it involved a battle and a report with clean metrics. The anomaly had not been defeated, it had been redirected. People had not been fixed, they had been allowed to remain. The Launtree 8's crew stabilized under careful medical supervision. Some carried lingering effects, memory gaps like missing tiles in a mosaic, small changes in voice or reflex, after images that would take time to integrate. Croy spent hours helping them name what had happened without letting the naming become a cage. Back aboard the Enterprise, the ship's transporter systems were stripped down to their assumptions. Geordi and Lieutenant Commander Data worked like men dismantling a weapon while it was still warm. They rewrote error correction routines, inserted consent locks, built anomaly detection into every buffer handshake. They argued, sometimes sharply, and then returned to work because the stakes were too large for pride. Human Data sat with them when he could, wearing the exocortex patch in short sessions, learning its rhythm the way he had once learned a violin piece, slowly, imperfectly, with reverence for each small improvement. He was tired. He was also here. Commander Hale watched the changes with an expression that looked like discomfort and might have been recalibration. On the 4th day after the rescue, she requested a private meeting with Picard. Human Data was not present. He did not need to be. The argument was not his burden alone anymore. Picard met Hale in his ready room. The stars outside the window slid past with quiet indifference. Hale did not sit when Picard offered. She stood, hands clasped behind her back, posture still too military to relax. "Captain," Hale said, "Starfleet Security has reviewed the incident reports." Picard's voice was calm. "And?" he asked. Hale's jaw tightened. "Coercion increased risk," she said flatly. Picard's eyebrows rose slightly. "Did it?" he said. Hale's mouth tightened. "Sato's attempt created a vulnerability that was exploited," she said. "My protocols did not prevent abduction. Our assumptions about control created blind spots." Picard held her gaze. "That is a difficult thing to admit," he said. Hale's eyes flicked away for a fraction of a second. "I am not apologizing," she said. "I am updating." She added, quieter. "We identified the insider who opened the timing gap. They're in the brig. Subcommander Wren is not." Picard's mouth curved faintly. "That is all I ask," he said. Hale exhaled slowly. "Starfleet is sending a formal offer," she said. "A compromise." Picard's jaw tightened. "For Mr. Data," he said. Hale nodded. "For both," she said. "It's grow Okfo to die T als Senta." They delivered the offer in 10 forward because Guinan insisted the briefing room felt like a trap. Picard sat at a small table by the window. Troy sat beside him. Crusher hovered nearby with her arms folded, eyes sharp. Geordi sat with his hands wrapped around a mug he wasn't drinking. Worf stood a few paces back, silent as a wall. Lieutenant Commander Data stood near the table, posture perfect. Human Data sat opposite him, hands trembling slightly around a cup of tea. Commander Hale stood at the side, pad in hand, expression composed. "Starfleet Command has issued an updated directive," Hale said, "based on the containment event and subsequent analysis." Human Data's stomach tightened. Hale continued, voice even. "Lieutenant Commander Data will retain his commission and post aboard the Enterprise. His oversight restrictions will be reduced. Starfleet acknowledges his refusal to be used as leverage was consistent with Federation personhood standards." Lieutenant Commander Data inclined his head once. Hale turned her gaze to Human Data. "Mr. Data is offered a civilian appointment as special consultant on transporter ethics and continuity protocols," she said. "The appointment includes travel optionality, autonomy protections, and medical support. Starfleet will not require restoration as a condition of service." Human Data blinked. The words felt unreal. He swallowed. "You are offering me a role," he said, voice rough. Hale's gaze was steady. Yes, she said, a role you choose. Crusher's mouth tightened. And what's the catch? She asked sharply. Hale's jaw flexed. The catch is that Starfleet will still monitor hostile interest, she said, and Mr. Dega's movement will be subject to reasonable security coordination. Human Data felt anger rise, then forced it down. Reasonable, he said quietly. Hale met his gaze. Yes, she said, reasonable, not custodial. Picard's voice was calm and hard. Starfleet will put that in writing, he said. Hale nodded. It is in writing, she said, and handed the pad across the table. Human Data did not take it immediately. He stared out the window at the stars. He thought of resignation. He thought of being dragged through a transporter beam. He thought of the moment on the pad when he'd whispered, "This is me," on purpose. He looked down at his hands, the tremor, the warmth, the reality. He looked at Geordi, whose eyes were wet and stubborn. He looked at Picard, who held his gaze with fierce respect. He looked at Lieutenant Commander Data, who wore his face and had chosen, in small ways, not to be Starfleet's shortcut. Human Data reached out and took the pad. He read quickly, slower than he used to read, and yet more honestly. The words were legal. They were not warm. They did not say, "We are sorry.et." But they said, consent. They said, autonomy. They said, reversible support. They said, no forced restoration. Human Data exhaled slowly. "I accept," he said. Geordi let out a breath like a sound of relief he hadn't known he was making. Troy's eyes filled. Crusher's jaw unclenched by a fraction. Hale nodded once, as if stamping a document. "Understood," she said. Lieutenant Commander Data's gaze remained on Human Data. "Then your next steps are chosen," he said quietly. Human Data swallowed. "Yes," he whispered. "Say." That night, a message arrived in Geordi's queue, an encrypted packet tagged with no recognizable Federation signature. It looked, at first glance, like a threat. Geordi brought it to Lieutenant Commander Data, who scanned it with quick precision. "The encryption is Romulan," the android said, "but rudimentary, personal." Human Data's stomach tightened. "Vren," he whispered. Lieutenant Commander Data shook his head slightly. "Not Vren," he said. "There is no Tal Shiar authentication stamp." Geordi frowned. "Then who?" The packet contained a file. Title, "For the One I Was." Human Data went cold. His hands trembled so hard he had to grip the edge of Geordi's console. "Open it," Geordi whispered. Human Data swallowed hard. "Do it offline," he said, voice tight. "No shipwide access." Geordi nodded quickly and isolated the file on a secure terminal. Crusher stood behind them, eyes sharp. Troy hovered at the doorway, drawn by the gravity of the moment. Lieutenant Commander Data initiated the decryption in a contained sandbox. Fingers moving with practiced care. The file opened. Human Data's words appeared, his own voice from weeks ago, preserved in text and cadence, the letter he had written to a self who might never exist. At the bottom of the file, appended in a different script, was a short note in Federation Standard. "I did not want to be corrected either. Tiga." Human Data stared at the line until his vision blurred. The technician. The one who had loosened the restraints. The one who had whispered, "Your people are coming.es." Data's throat tightened. Tears rose, hot and immediate. He did not wipe them away. Geordi's voice was rough. He sent it back, he whispered. Human Data nodded once, unable to speak. Lieutenant Commander Data looked at the note for a long moment. "This indicates moral agency within Tal Shiar operations," he said quietly. Crusher snorted. "Or someone who got sick of being used," she said. Troy stepped closer. Her voice was gentle. "Your words mattered," she said to Human Data. Human Data's breath trembled. "I was afraid they would only be used as a weapon," he whispered. Troy's eyes were wet. "They were," she said softly, "and they were also something else." Human Data looked at Lieutenant Commander Data. The android's gaze met his. "Will you listen?" Human Data asked, voice raw. The android inclined his head. "Yes," he said. Human Data took the file and began to read aloud. His voice shook at first, then it steadied as the words moved through him again. Words about fear not being a flaw, about love not being a problem to solve, about the ordinary heartbeat as an ordinary miracle. As he read, he felt the room change. Not because the words were magic, because he was choosing to share them. Because he was letting his private reverence become communal instead of stolen. When he finished, the room was quiet. Lieutenant Commander Data stood very still. Then he said softly, "May I call you Data?" Human Data's chest tightened. He swallowed. "Yes," he whispered. The android nodded once, as if accepting a constraint he had been waiting to be allowed. "Then," he said, "Data, thank you." Human Data let out a shaky laugh that turned into a sob he did not hide. Geordi stepped forward and put a hand on his shoulder. Warmth grounded him. Later, Human Data went to 10 forward alone. Guinan was there, polishing glasses with slow, patient movements. She looked up as he entered. "You look lighter," she said. Human Data sat at the bar. "My file came back," he said. Guinan's eyebrows rose slightly. "Did it?" she said. Human Data nodded. "Someone returned it," he said. "Someone who was part of the machine." Guinan's mouth curved faintly. "Machines have people inside them," she said. Human Data stared at his hands. The tremor was still there. The weakness was still there. The uncertainty was still there. So was his heartbeat. "I accepted Starfleet's offer," he said. Guinan nodded once. "How does that feel?" she asked. Human Data considered. "Like a door," he said quietly. "Not blank, not labeled for me by someone else. A door I chose." Guinan smiled faintly. "Good," she said. Outside the window, the stars slid past, indifferent, ancient. Inside 10 forward, 2 men with the same face existed on the same ship. One wore a uniform and carried a commission. One wore plain cloth and carried a heartbeat. Both were alive in different ways. Human Data watched the stars for a long time and felt reverence rise again, not for power, not for certainty, but for the fragile continuity that persisted despite everything reaching for it. And in the quiet, he made a small, stubborn choice that felt like the beginning of a life. He let himself be here,